Hogwarts, the first capitalist of the magical world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 328 Environmental protection is a big business. What pure electric sedan? Did we hear it right? It can also be called a car. Without the roar of the internal combustion engine, the car has no soul. That is, how far can an electric car go? Carol's words immediately made the onlookers, who were just stunned, show contempt on their faces. As one of the countries with the strongest automobile culture in the world, Americans are particularly fond of high displacement, high horsepower cars. As soon as I heard it was an electric car, my interest instantly faded. But Cole was not panicking. He always planned 3 steps ahead for everything he did. He invented the smartphone ahead of time and caused the financial crisis on Wall Street, but in the final analysis, he was just making money from retail investors and future working class people. This is not in line with his character, and he is more aware that if real capital wants to make big money, it must collude with the government. This electric car, which used magic to improve its craftsmanship and arrived here nearly half a century ahead of schedule, was designed for this purpose. So he did not explain to the crowd below the stage, who were talking about it as he had done before. Instead, he slowly walked to Mr. Mario Cuomo and said with a smile, "It seems that not everyone understands the importance of new energy to the future of mankind. We only have one Earth, but not all residents of the Earth are willing to make efforts to protect the Earth. I need your support, sir. And by the way, I would like to announce our plans to cooperate with the New York State government." Upon hearing this, Mr. Mario Cuomo glanced at the young man in front of him, then slowly lowered his head and began to think. After about half a minute of silence, he asked, "Give me a specific date for the specific investment plan, and what's going on with the Federation. If I were a person, I would certainly be happy to support you, but I'm the governor of New York after all. Every word I say represents the state government of New York, and I must be accountable to the people who elected me and my colleagues." "Of course." Karl smiled. "The specific date should be within a week after the presidential inauguration. There is certainly no problem at the federal level. After all, President Clinton said that the future of the United States will be driven by the economy. So, I think, as a clean economy and a global environmental pioneer, we must leave a clean land for our children. These topics are attractive enough, don't you think, sir?" While speaking, Carol walked to the other person without leaving a trace and reminded him in a tiny voice, "I heard that when Mr. Mario Cuomo was in college, he was always the most active environmental pioneer in the university. I once published an article in the school magazine, which expressed the hope that humans could find a way to achieve carbon neutrality before the new century arrives, whether it's with any product or any car. I think it's very coincidental that I'm bringing up this idea again at this time, just as I was an environmental pioneer during my university years. Grow into a leader in pioneering a new environmental landscape." Mr. Mario Cuomo was so shocked that he couldn't speak when he looked at Karl in front of him. It was not until this moment that he finally figured it out. What the other party did was actually a big gift to him personally. I was afraid that many people in the audience might not be able to understand what I was going to say next, but that did not prevent me from taking advantage of the huge public opinion at the scene. I have completed the setting of my new character, and now that I think about it, this character is perfect. It is one of the hottest political topics in the next 20 to 30 years. He can already imagine that after his character is confirmed. What kind of public attention can I get in many places in Northern Europe and Germany? Mr. Mario Cuomo nodded slowly at Karl. "I will never forget what you have done, Mr. Hohenzollern. I think some of the topics can really help you speed up. As long as there are no issues at the federal level, New York State will be your loyal supporter. Without Much nonsense. Mr. Mario Cuomo made direct political guarantees, then he walked slowly to the center of the stage, stood in the center of the stage, looked at the surging crowd below the stage, and the sound of machinery turning coming from the temporary factory building next to it. There were also reporters on the huge metal flag poles around, with some tying themselves to the flag poles with ropes, and still carrying cameras, to shoot at the stage. All the voices came together, giving people an indescribable feeling. At this moment, he finally realized what it meant to have the world's attention focused on you. I finally understood why people always compete to be the protagonist in a drama performance. Because it's really cool. Ladies and gentlemen, after Mr. Hohenzollern's introduction, I was overwhelmed with emotion and I must explain it to you. As the governor of New York State, I want to explain to everyone why this all-electric car represents the future and hope. Without any greetings or hesitation, Mr. Mario Cuomo started from frame zero and began to deliver his speech directly. The content of the speech was generally very boring, and it was nothing more than about some grand topics such as environmental protection, carbon neutrality, and the future of mankind. But it has to be said that Mr. Mario Cuomo, as the governor of New York State, has quite strong speaking skills at the same time. His personal prestige in New York did not cause the audience to show any tendency to become agitated because of the boring content of the speech. In this way, Mr. Mario Cuomo turned a technology press conference into a public press conference by the New York State government on environmental issues. This may be the first time that a Democratic politician has made such a large-scale political speech since the US election. It is more than half a month earlier than the inauguration ceremony of the new president. As a leader in New York State, I'm committed to advancing policies and investments that accelerate our transition to carbon neutrality. But I also ask you, my fellow citizens, to join this movement, because every small step will make a big difference. If Mr. Hohenzollern, leading his company, used unparalleled science and technology to lead us into the 21st century ahead of time, then I also hope that every New Yorker will do something to bring our own moral character and ethics into the 21st century. At the end of his speech, Mr. Mario Cuomo also quoted the theme that Karl just mentioned, with the goal of entering the 21st century ahead of time. It brought the whole speech to a perfect end. Although the content of the speech was a bit boring, it was matched by Mr. Mario Cuomo's hard-working performance. It was still very contagious. After the speech, the whole audience burst into warm applause. At the same time, a slightly neutral male mechanical voice suddenly came. It is detected that there are multiple terminal devices that can be connected at the scene. Do you want to connect the car to the computer? Chapter 329. Don't compare marketing with Carol. What do you mean? What is car machine connection? What does it mean to detect that there are multiple terminal devices that can be connected? I always thought there was something strange about this electric car, and now I finally remember it. It's like Jarvis from Iron Man in the comics. Is there an artificial intelligence developed in it? This sudden sound immediately drew the attention of the crowd, who had just stood up and applauded. Back to the silver grey car. People were talking about it, and some even made bold guesses on the stage. Karl walked back to the microphone from the back, stretched out his hand and shook hands with Mr. Mario Cuomo again for a photo. Karl asked jokingly under the illumination of the flash bulbs, "How does it feel to be the protagonist?" Mr. Mario Cuomo, "Very wonderful, Mr. Hohenzollern." Mr. Mario Cuomo responded with a low laugh. But then his face fell, and he said with some resentment, "It's just that the time is a little short. Can't you let the applause last a little longer?" "Sorry, sir." Karl showed an apologetic expression. "Time is running out now. I can't wait even a second." Mr. Mario Cuomo was a little confused when he heard this, but he didn't ask any more questions. After the photo shoot, he stepped back and handed the stage back to Karl. Karl stood in front of the microphone again, but did not prepare for his speech as he did before. Instead, he spoke directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, please keep quiet for a moment. We are now going to welcome the first batch of Mocha Tech 1 mobile phones. Please move to the front of the production workshop." stay within the safe yellow line, and come together to witness this historic moment. We will use reality to completely destroy those boring conspiracies and rumors. After he finished speaking, the workshop door that had been tightly closed slowly opened, and ultra-low pressure white mist poured out from the door. It seemed as if the entire south end of the venue had fallen into a dream in the clouds under the strong white light. There are several staff members wearing pure white full-body dust-free suits. They came out pushing several carts, which were divided into 5 separate spaces, each of which contained a custom-made black plastic box. The box was divided into 6 small squares of 5x30 by a punching machine, and in each small square lies a gold-colored Mocha Tech 1 smartphone. Like dazzling gold bricks, they sparkle under the flashlights of countless cameras. It's really been produced, and the back panel color has been changed. This color and temperament show that it is prepared for rich people. It's too early to tell. Who knows if this is just some model until the screen is turned on. Who can guarantee that these are real phones? Looking at those mobile phones that looked like gold bricks, the crowd began to burst into heated discussions. The staff members acted as if they didn't hear anything and just pushed the carts back and forth around the square to ensure that all the cameras present can carefully capture the scene in front of them. It was not until 5 minutes later that Karl on the stage spoke again. Okay, fellow media friends, I think everyone should have gotten the shot they wanted. Let's move on to the next step and start officially breaking the lies. I know that among the crowd just now, even though these things were placed in front of him, there was a kind of strong paranoia. It was like a piece of black gauze covering his eyes, making him unwilling to believe what he saw. After that, Karl looked at the silver grey Tesla SU7 and gave the order, "Hello, Tesla, take over all the lights and start the random lottery mode." "Okay, master. I'm starting to request to take over all the lights in the venue through the network. Please wait while the request is being made. It has been completed. We have now taken over all the lights in the venue." "What does it mean? Isn't this a car?" "The car can also be connected to the internet. I must write everything I saw into a novel when I go back. It's really too cyberpunk. Science fiction is simply too weak." Hearing the sound made by the car, every one of the people in the square side some people were so shocked that they started talking nonsense, while on the other side of the stage, Karl spoke again. "In order to verify that these mobile phones are not models, but real mobile terminals that can be used, we will conduct a random lottery. I will use this Tesla SU7 to control about 40 mobile searchlights around the venue and randomly illuminate one person in the venue. The people who are illuminated will be able to randomly select a mobile phone that has been produced and turn it on to check it themselves. Lend it to me temporarily." "You heard it right. Lend it to me. After I show it to him, I will give the phone to him." Matt never mistreats loyal users who are willing to cooperate with the company. Did you hear that? Jesus Christ. I bullied my classmates in elementary school, got several girls pregnant in middle school, and got involved in gangsterism after dropping out of high school, but I still want to be a good person. I had no choice before. Please bless me to be chosen. I'm willing to change my ways. It couldn't be crazier than this. I guess those other billionaires are racking their brains to understand why this young man has so many marketing tricks. As soon as Karl finished speaking, the crowd in the square erupted in the loudest noise, and all kinds of strange prayers could be heard. The crowd knelt down and prayed madly, and some people almost fought each other for a position. The reporters gathered together and after discussing, decided to cast a wide net, and everyone rushed towards the 4 corners of the square. The goal is to have a reporter at every angle, so that the most perfect shot can be captured at the moment the lottery results are announced. Time is running out. Karl on the stage looked at the crowd swarming below and reminded with a smile. At the same time, start the countdown considerately. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. After the countdown of 10, dozens of white searchlights that had been turned off around the square lit up at the same time. The lights kept flickering on and off, and a white light kept flashing on the ground point. If they didn't know that this was in front of the New York State Capitol, many people present would have almost swayed to the rhythm. Finally, just when everyone was about to twist their bodies and turn the square in front of the Parliament building into a disco scene, a beam of light shone into a remote corner, and the strong reflection made the entire square seem a little dazzling. It turned out that in that remote corner, a bald reporter was carrying a camera and looking around for the lucky winner. However, he did not expect that the white light was right above his head. His big bald head was now the brightest light bulb on the East Coast. Welcome to this light bulb. Oh no. Welcome to this gentleman. Congratulations, you have won the grand prize. Chapter 330, The Call of the Goddess of Luck. The bald reporter named by Karl seemed to have no idea what was going on. He still carried the camera on his shoulder and scanned around, trying to find the lucky person in the crowd, but he never noticed his bald head. At this moment, it shines brightly like the Sunday. You don't have to look for it everywhere, sir. Sometimes, if you want something, but can't find it, just look up, and it may be right next to you. Karl, on the stage, gave a reminder. It was not until then that the reporter suddenly looked up at the sky and saw a holy white light enveloping his entire body. He couldn't help but exclaim loudly, as if that was the road to heaven, Jesus Christ, are the angels coming to get me? It's not Mr. Angel, it's Lady Luck. At this time, several Secret Service staff members had squeezed through the noisy crowd and finally came to this remote corner and brought the bald reporter to the center of the stage. He pointed at the hundreds of newly produced smartphones on the carts and said with jealousy on his face, "Pick one, sir. I'm afraid your luck in this life has run out at this moment. Here's a piece of advice for you. Don't agree to anyone who wants to buy your phone after you go out. It's better to pay for some bodyguards to take you away. This is a lot of money." The bald reporter was still a little confused about the situation. He stood there in bewilderment, looking around, not knowing what to do. Until a young voice sounded behind them. "Don't worry, sir. Take your pick. I'll keep my word. The phone you choose will be your gift, and you don't have to worry about your personal safety. Matt will hire the most professional security team to escort you back home." Carol had walked down from the stage at some point and was standing behind everyone with a smile on his face. The onlookers and reporters were also a little confused by the sudden appearance of Karl. They looked at each other and whispered to each other, "How did he get down here? Did you see his movement trajectory? No. Is there some kind of teleportation device here? This is simply teleportation. Oh my god. It's fine to have so many new technologies, but I didn't expect there would be such a magical performance. This young man is really an eye-opener. Mr. Hohenzollern, is this really you? Can I interview you privately?" Compared to the onlookers and reporters, the bald reporter seemed much more excited and came to Carol trembling all over. He shook hands cordially and asked cautiously. Karl showed enough magnanimity. After shaking hands with the other party, he kindly directed the other party to look at the carts. "I think interviews and stuff shouldn't be a big problem, but I think the time of everyone here is valuable. Let's not waste everyone's time and finish this press conference first." After saying that, Karl took out a card from his ring and handed it to the other party. "This is my personal business card with my personal phone number on it. When the time is right, I guess you can just call me and do an interview anytime. I'm really honored." The bald reporter was so excited that he was speechless. He quickly added a business card and hid it in the inner pocket of his clothes. The speed was so fast that only a shadow could be seen. The reporter nearby, who had been trying to take a sneak shot, couldn't help but complain when he saw this scene. "I said Mr. Hohenzollern was a magician. How he made that business card appear out of thin air." "Don't mention Mr. Hohenzollern. That bald guy's hand speed seems to be quite fast. I just blinked and the business card disappeared without a trace. That's not magic at all, idiot. That's magic. My guess was right. There is a real world hidden beneath the surface of the world. Just As several reporters were complaining to each other, a rough voice came from behind them. The neurotic redneck blogger had come behind them without them noticing. His eyes were fixed on Karl in the center of the stage, and he kept muttering to himself, with the fusion of magic and technology, we ordinary people are doomed, America is doomed, and we will not only be exploited by those capitalists. In the future, there will be a group of people who, because they have blood different from ours flowing in their bodies, will be naturally superior to the human race. We will end up like India, with a horrible caste system. You also know about the caste system. I thought you had eaten all that crap and made your brain go stupid. Don't pay attention to him. He's not a normal person at all. Such neurotic remarks naturally aroused dissatisfaction among those journalists who claimed to be elites, and they all mocked him. Then he carried his expensive equipment and left the rugged blogger. He was left alone, staring at the center of the square at this inappropriate angle, and whispering constantly. I was in the center of the square, and the bald reporter finally realized how lucky he was, and began to pace back and forth around the carts as a TV reporter. Although he has not reached the level of independent interviews and article writing, he has many years of experience in field filming. It also allowed him to accumulate certain insights. He certainly knew what was happening in New York, the United States, and the world. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the pile of mobile phones in front of them, shining like gold bricks. They all wanted to be the first to try something new, but they didn't expect that such a good thing would actually happen to them. At the same time, he now understood why those people reminded him to hire a security company to escort him away. You should know that these mobile phones in front of you are not just mobile calling devices, but more like passes to Charlie's Chocolate Factory in the novel. It possesses endless magical powers, and is likely to bring you unimaginable wealth in the future. So after much hesitation, the bald reporter made the simplest choice. He closed his eyes and turned around on the spot for more than 10 times. Feeling dizzy, he casually fell beside a cart, and his right hand just happened to touch a brand new Mocha Tech 1. Perfect. Random selection. No one should say it's cheating. Karl applauded enthusiastically on the side, then personally helped the bald reporter up from the ground, pointing at the smartphone in the other's hand and speaking. Okay, sir, can you turn on this phone and lend it to me temporarily? I need to use this phone to show off some of the other car features and prove it to some rats hiding behind the scenes. Rude slander and malicious verbal defamation cannot change the reality. Now is the time to settle accounts. Ha 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 ha. Chapter 331 Car Machine Interconnection Function. Karl's performance is very contagious, and he perfectly expresses the feeling of joy of enduring humiliation and misunderstanding and finally turning things around. The phrase liquidate everyone was extremely infectious, and in addition to the professional reporters, other specially invited audience members were also present. They all stood up and clapped their hands hard. The applause gathered into waves, rolling back and forth in the square. Karl, who was enjoying it all, just smiled. He had already felt the message conveyed by the applause. That sense of separation and dissatisfaction has long accumulated in the hearts of these ordinary people, and their ultimate goal can be achieved. But back to reality. Karl still smiled and waved to signal everyone to stop applauding, then walked to the bald reporter. Teach the other person step by step how to operate this phone. Here is the power button. To unlock the screen, just slide it lightly like this. This screen is specially made. It uses human body resistance sensing, which is very sensitive and smooth. Sliding on the edge will return. The only button to press is the fingerprint unlocking. It's very smooth to return to the desktop. Under Karl's hands-on instruction, the bald reporter quickly completed the account registration and a series of other tedious tasks, but I soon discovered that there were some differences in this phone, especially a fan-shaped signal logo in the upper left corner of the screen. What is this, Mr. Hohenzollern? I've never seen this logo on any other phone. This is a Wi-Fi signal. Karl replied with a smile. It is the result of a communications laboratory in Australia, but it is only a very preliminary result. Last year, in 1991, we barely obtained the qualification to use it, but my company acquired these technologies with the support of our company's special technological strength, this technology has been brought to a stage where it can actually be used. It is precisely because of this technology that I can use this phone to show everyone many functions that have never been seen before. Of course, there are still many functions that have not been fully realized, which require our subsequent industrial chain support and the improvement of other matters, Karl explained in detail, which stunned everyone present. He then stretched out his hand to the bald reporter and asked with a smile, "Can I?" "Of course, sir." The bald reporter quickly handed the phone to Karl. Although his eyes were full of reluctance, his movements were very capable. Karl took the phone and skillfully opened the interface on the phone. After some operations until a neutral male mechanical voice was heard, "The car machine connection has been completed. Now you can use your phone to do many interesting things for me." As soon as he finished speaking, the silver grey sedan, which had all its doors and trunk open just now, closed all its doors and trunk again. The vehicle's engine was still running, and the headlights in front were still flashing. Cole walked quickly to the side of the vehicle and, as a member of the National Guard maintaining discipline, tightened the line slightly. Allowing the reporters to take closer shots of the scene inside the car. He turned to look at the bald reporter and reminded him in a low voice, "Don't forget your job. You are the only reporter here who can take close-up photos." The bald reporter hurriedly prepared to return to his previous position, but found that the crowd was too crowded and he couldn't get out. Fortunately, some reporters were quick-witted and handed their cameras directly to the other party, shouting loudly, "If you want to use our machine, just give us a copy of the footage you captured. We can give it to you directly. Don't listen to them, you SARS. We have the latest leaker equipment, which is worth more than $10. We can give it to you after the shooting is completed. Our lens is from Zeiss. This lens alone is more expensive than their camera. You SARS." For a moment, a group of reporters were arguing with each other and almost broke out into a fight. Fortunately, the bald reporter was tactful enough. Without much hesitation, he took the camera from the New York Times reporter, who also belonged to the Democratic media. Start taking the only close-up shot of Karl. Karl, who was standing next to the vehicle, turned into a perfect salesman and spoke in an elegant manner. "We welcome audiences from all over the world to watch this important press conference. I will introduce our future star products to you. The Tesla SU7 pure electric sedan is not only a low carbon and environmentally friendly car, it is also a vehicle from the future. It is equipped with countless technologies that many people cannot imagine." After that, Karl bent down slightly, first showing the lit mobile phone to the camera, and then gently placed the phone on the doorframe of the driver's seat. After a crisp electronic simulated unlocking sound, the red indicator light on the side doorframe of the car turned green. Karl opened the car door and got in without taking any keys. He was holding the steering wheel in the car and turned to look at the camera. "This is the first technology we want to show you, and it is also one of the most practical technologies. With the mobile phone as a digital key, through our exclusive encrypted Bluetooth and digital protocol, you no longer have to worry about not being able to find your car keys. With just a mobile phone, users can easily get in and out of the car. Users can even remotely control the vehicle's unlocking and starting, and even share the digital key with other authorized users. That is to say, as long as your partner buys a mobile phone from our company, they can share the car with us." After that, Karl motioned to the bald reporter to move the camera deeper and shoot at the huge central control screen in the middle of the vehicle. After starting the vehicle, Karl gently placed the lit phone on the central control screen. Soon, the neutral male mechanical voice came again. "I'm sorry, sir. We haven't detected any of your vehicle usage habits or entertainment software history. We are unable to provide you with reliable services. We hope you can provide relevant data and we will serve you wholeheartedly. Hello, Tesla." Karl immediately ordered after the vehicle finished playing. "Record my current vehicle status, including the temperature and ventilation of the air conditioner, seat height adjustment, and steering wheel adjustment." At the same time, a beautiful jazz music is played, and the music is recorded in the car computer. Recording completed. The moment Karl issued the order, the vehicle also reported completion. "Dear Sir, the next time you get on the bus, we will automatically adjust the seat to its current state. Ah. You sure about the current service? Sure. Thanks. Chapter 332 Sedan Function Display. After doing all this, Karl got out of the car directly, walked to the bald reporter, stretched out his hand and said, "Sir, please let me take over your job for a while. Hand the camera to me, and get in the car. Everything that can be adjusted, such as the front and rear position of the seat, the angle of the backrest, the temperature of the air conditioner, etc. I've adjusted everything so I can show you how this car works." Ah. The bold reporter was obviously stunned for a moment, but he quickly recovered from his daze point. He became excited again, hurriedly handed the camera to Karl, and walked quickly to the car. I slowly got into the car, stroked the steering wheel and all the interior decoration, my hands shaking uncontrollably. This guy is really lucky today. He can experience this future sedan firsthand, which has not yet announced a release date. I can already foresee that after this press conference, the number of TV stations that will invite him for interviews will definitely be no less than that of the governor. I really don't envy you at all. Not at all. If I'm not jealous, why are you pinching me? Let go. That's not a place you can touch. The moment the bald reporter got into the car, the reporters in the crowd watching around him couldn't help but burst into discussion point in general. They were very polite and there was no excessive language point, and the bald reporter sitting in the driver's seat, after being excited for about half a minute, finally started to complete the work that Karl told him to do. He moved all the movable things in the vehicle, and as a reporter, he knew very well what to do in order to make the next program most effective. So, when he got out of the car, he adjusted the entire driving position very strangely. The seat is adjusted extremely forward, and the steering wheel is adjusted to an extremely low position. "Mr. Hohenzollern, is it okay for me to do this?" The bald reporter took the camera from Karl and asked with a smile on his face. "Of course, Mr. Perfect," Karl responded with a smile, and then he walked to the car door again, facing the reporters and cameras who were watching. A generous display of the strangely adjusted driving position. I believe that all the men here will have a very annoying thing, that is, their beloved car is borrowed by someone else, or after my wife borrowed it, every time I drove it back, I would find the driver's seat, steering wheel, and some subtle settings, everything changes, and sometimes it takes a week before we feel comfortable again. This process is so painful, isn't it? Karl's rhetorical question immediately resonated with many men present. They nodded one after another with bitter expressions on their faces. It seems that no bad memories are recalled. In this atmosphere, Karl took out the phone from his pocket again and unlocked the screen in front of everyone. Click on the vehicle app, then reach into the car and touch the phone under the main console. "Hello, sir. We have detected that the seats and other settings in the car have changed. We are now following the data you saved in advance. Please wait a moment to help you readjust." After a burst of electronic prompt sounds ended, the slight sound of the motor turning slowly came, and the seat position was adjusted. The changed steering wheel position, the direction of the air conditioning vents, and the layout of the sunroof were all back to what they were a few minutes ago. It was very quiet without any noise, and the speed was beyond everyone's imagination. In just over 10 seconds, everything in the vehicle returned to the state before Karl got off the car, as smooth as a flashback in a movie. Everyone present was stunned, and some people even rubbed their eyes in disbelief. Karl smiled and sat back in the car without any unsmooth movements, with his feet positioned in the driving position and the steering wheel facing the right direction. Everything fits perfectly. It's a really amazing operation. I'm a little tempted now. Compared with this car, my Cadillac is like an illiterate person who has never been to school. Don't say that, George. I even have some illusions now. I think this car may understand me better than my wife in the future. I must buy one of these cars so that I can have someone to talk to after my divorce. This silky smooth operation completely conquered all the men present, and Karl, who was sitting in the driver's seat, could vouch for it. Through his observation of the men's eyes, he knew that he could sell the car on the spot. As long as you make sure your pose machine always has power, you can earn endless money. However, He knew that this car was not the ultimate goal, and he had to draw a bigger, rounder, more magical and more technological pie point. So he waved to the bald reporter standing outside the car door, signaling him to extend the camera into the driver's seat. Open the main control screen next to you. Touch the screen with your hand and slide gently on it. The smooth animation rolled wildly on the ultra-thin LCD screen, leaving the bald reporter stunned. After searching for a long time, Karl opened a navigation software, pointed at the information on it, and the screen of his mobile phone in his hand, turned his head, and looked at the mirror and spoke emotionally. Tesla SU7 is definitely not just a simple car, it will be an important partner in our future smart life. Next, I will introduce several functions of this car that may be realized in the future. The first one is what drivers care about most: navigation and intelligent route planning. After saying that, Karl leaned his body back a little to make it easier for the camera to capture the entire central control screen. He pointed at the animation above and continued to explain seriously. After using the phone for a long time and using the vehicle, the Tesla SU7 phone can monitor and adjust the vehicle's driving status through a dedicated app. This includes real-time viewing of vehicle location, driving route, energy consumption information, and even remote activation of the vehicle's autonomous driving function for parking. Once our company has completed mapping of all roads in the United States, we can also use mobile applications to intelligently plan travel plans based on users' daily schedules and traffic conditions. This includes the optimal route, estimated arrival time, and even automatic planning of charging station stops. After explaining all this, Karl got out of the car from the other side of the seat as sleekly as a beautiful snake. He came to the other side of the vehicle, opened his arms, and said with a smile to the reporters and cameras on the other side, "Before the new millennium, our company will complete the construction of Starlink to realize all the network functions of this car and the navigation and route planning features I just introduced." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 333. What is Super Pi? What is Starlink? And what did he just say? Did anyone understand? Karl performed with great devotion, but the audience's reaction seemed to be mediocre. After listening to his dazzling introduction, everyone present after being in a daze for nearly 5 minutes, a reporter cautiously asked the person next to him. The numerous reporters did not crowd towards Karl as they had done before, hoping to get exclusive reports and headlines. These are journalists who have been working on the front lines of news, and many of them are even working on the front lines of scientific reporting. At this moment, everyone was completely confused. They looked at each other, and no one came forward to ask. After all, the world's attention is focused here now. If you ask good questions, there will naturally be no problem in getting promoted and getting a raise. But what if the questions asked are very stupid, just like the crazy BBC reporter and the New York Times reporter who deliberately found fault? Their careers are all over, and it is said that one of them has been sent to a mental hospital. Another was sent to Madagascar to see if he could take pictures of penguins. The whole audience was silent again for 5 minutes, until Mr. Mario Cuomo, who had been watching the show, appeared on the stage. He walked from the stage to Karl's side, clenched his right hand into a fist, pretended that it was a microphone, handed it to the other party, and asked, "Dear Mr. Hohenzollern, I think with our limited knowledge, we cannot understand all the strange terms you are saying, and all kinds of functions that seem to exist only in science fiction. We are just a group of ordinary people with little culture, so I hope you can explain in detail about the Starlink project you just mentioned, and your company's future prospects behind this project." Faced with the New York governor taking the initiative to break the awkwardness for him, Karl certainly showed enough goodwill, and he was also very clear about what the other party wanted. So he tried hard to act like a professional scientist and technician, and he even escaped from his ring again. Everyone present thought it was a magic trick, but in fact it was conjured up by magic. A pair of black framed glasses suitable for top students. After putting it on his nose, he spoke in a low voice. The Starlink project is an important part of our company's Mount Olympus program, which is internally codenamed Zeus. The King of Gods is also the foundation of all new technologies. Its concept is very simple. It is an ordinary plan to build a global satellite internet network. By deploying tens of thousands of small satellites in low Earth orbit, we can provide high-speed, low-latency broadband internet service to every corner of the planet. What? He is going to launch so many satellites? Did I hear correctly? The number of satellites is more than my bank balance. How is this possible? NASA simply cannot afford such a huge launch mission, and the cost will be terrifyingly high. This is simply the second Apollo program. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. This is too sci-fi, sir. There is no press conference more sci-fi than this. Do you know how much investment is required to launch a spacecraft? After Karl finished his speech, as expected, various questions followed one after another, and the reporters who were just very excited began to raise questions. Even Mr. Mario Cuomo was stunned by Karl's words. He knew that the young man in front of him liked to make big news, but I never expected that the news the other party wanted to make would be so big point. So he continued to play the role of a reporter and continued to ask questions based on the questions raised by the people around him. Mr. Hohenzollern, this is shocking. This is the most exaggerated company plan I have ever heard of in my life. I wonder what NASA will think after hearing about this plan. Can their space shuttle handle such a huge project? Even if they are willing, your company may not be able to bear such a huge cost. That's natural, Karl said with a confident smile. So we don't plan to use the space shuttle to accomplish this feat. At an appropriate time in the future, we will solemnly introduce our company's private aerospace project, codenamed Apollo. The great sun god, his sun chariot gallops back and forth in the sky, and our future spacecraft will be just as great. After that, Karl suddenly turned around and looked at the Tesla Su-7 beside him and gave a loud order. Hello, Tesla, turn on the projection mode of the headlights and project the preset simple image of the Dragon spacecraft onto the stage background. Okay, processing. Ready to start casting. Casting completed. The headlights of the silver gray sedan lit up again, but this time it was not the calm and monotonous color light as before. Instead, it is a complete projection, which is directed towards the white wall behind the stage. A huge colorful projected picture appeared in front of everyone. After all the cameras on the scene turned around, Cole pointed to the huge picture and said confidently, "Next, I'd like to introduce the Apollo spacecraft program. This is a reusable space transportation system. It can safely and efficiently transport astronauts and cargo to the International Space Station, and it can also launch the satellites we need into the orbits we need." The Apollo spacecraft was designed using state-of-the-art materials and technologies to ensure safe and economical travel, while also reducing the environmental impact of space exploration. Of course, this is not our ultimate goal, because how could the god of the sun only project his sunlight onto the earth? It needs to radiate the entire solar system. No one said a word. Not even the reporters, not even the audience, not even the state officials. Everyone was looking at the huge light and shadow picture in shock. The Parliament Square, which had been noisy all day, became unprecedentedly quiet. Only from the factory that had closed its doors again could be heard the slight sound of motors turning. In the entire square, Cole was the only one who was still giving a spirited speech. He seemed to feel that such shock was not enough for him. Then he snapped his fingers lightly, and the projected image switched again. A picture of Mars and a sci-fi Martian base appeared in front of everyone. This is the ultimate goal of our company, to lead mankind into the future. The core of this plan is to establish a self-sufficient Mars base before 2030 to fully realize the goal of Mars colonization, and lay the foundation for future interstellar travel and residence. We will use automated construction technology to build living and working facilities on the surface of Mars, and at the same time, conduct agricultural planting experiments on Martian soil to prepare for long-term settlement. Climb up to the place of the gods that the universe has set for mankind, and climb up Mount Olympus completely. Silence, deathly silence, from the reporters, the audience, and the Secret Service agents who were maintaining discipline. Even those National Guard members who were armed with live ammunition could only express their attitude through silence. After listening to Karl's introduction, many people were unwilling to believe what they heard. But when 1, 2, 3, countless pairs of eyes were focused on the spirited blonde boy, they seemed to feel that nothing was impossible. After all, what they had heard before was what he thought was impossible. Hasn't it been realized by this young man now? Perhaps they really lack some imagination. But no matter what, everyone knows very well that after tonight, the entire financial market in the United States and even the world will be affected. Seeing this blonde boy again brought a little capital shock. Chapter 334 Strange Property Purchase. On Christmas Eve, December 12th, in the Catskill Mountains in suburban New York State, on an unknown forest-covered plain, Kevin Lestrange looked at the dilapidated manor in front of him and couldn't help but frown. He really couldn't understand why Karl, who was standing in front of him, took him and Cedric to drive through the cookie-cutter mountain road to come here. He thought that on such an important holiday, he had finally completed all his work and could finally take a break and enjoy the fruits of victory. At least he could get the respect and thanks that this guy deserves. But what he didn't expect was that the other party only handed him a bill. Asked to buy a property you have never heard of. Standing in front of the gate of this dilapidated manor, Kevin Lestrange couldn't understand why there was anything worth investing in here. Looking from a distance, this manor seems to be a place forgotten by time, silent and mysterious. As the gaze moves forward, the outline of the manor becomes clearer, revealing its English Victorian architectural style. The pure wooden structure exudes a kind of vicissitudes of beauty under the sunlight. The gate of the manor was half open, and the iron door was covered with vines, as if nature was silently declaring its sovereignty. Walking into the manor, you can see exquisitely carved window frames. Although the colors have faded, they still retain their former splendor. The paint on the walls has peeled off, revealing the original color of the wood, making people imagine its glory in its heyday. If you had come here a dozen years earlier, this manor would indeed be worth buying and could be used as a venue for secret gatherings. But now, Kevin Lestrange couldn't figure out what other use it had other than as a haunted house. What's even more infuriating is that the bank manager, who was trembling with fear at the sight, felt a little painful just thinking about the exorbitant price the other party offered. So he looked at Carol's back and spoke in an admonishing tone. You sure you want to buy this property? I have to remind you, Mr. Hohenzollern, that according to my evaluation, this place has no economic value. There are more Brooklyn neighborhoods that are worth investing in than here, because the crime rate there is just slightly higher, and this place has been completely forgotten by the world. Let me explain it in a simple and easy to understand way. Real estate is the necessary material basis for people to gather together. It must be consistent with the group living characteristics of human beings. This is why many small natural villages disappear naturally after industrialization and modernization, because the young people living there, even if it's just because they yearn for the pleasures and debauchery of big cities at first, after arriving in the big city, I found that it was nothing more than a cesspool fermented by human desires and dirty souls. They still won't leave, because compared to rolling in a cesspool and being watched by others, people are more afraid of being completely forgotten at the end of the world. And this is the end of the world in New York State, a place that has been forgotten. Amazing. Cedric looked at Kevin Lestrange with admiration. After sleeping in the same bed for the past few months, so no, it should be that after getting along harmoniously, he also changed his opinion of this annoying guy in front of him. He also had to admit that the other party was better than him in many aspects, at least in terms of talking. He was very good at refuting Karl, who was always stunned. However, he could only be deceived by Karl and was sold out by the other party for no apparent reason. He felt very sad when he thought about the unequal treaties he had signed with the other party. His heart was filled with indignation, and it seemed necessary to make a change. Just at this moment, the bank manager, who had been standing aside without saying a word, looking at Kevin Lestrange, he wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and continued to sell. Mr. Lestrange, your metaphor is poetic, but it is a bit too exaggerated. After This is one of the largest nature reserves in the entire state of New York, with plenty of fresh air, countless green areas, and opportunities to see wild animals at any time. These are all things that cannot be found in any other property in New York City, and they are also the highest value of this house. Haha. Kevin Lestrange sneered and said contemptuously, "The air is fresh enough. There is a gorgeous lavender field less than 2 kilometers away from this manor, and the trees around here are mostly pine trees, which means every spring, the pollen concentration here is frighteningly high for anyone with respiratory disease living here, not to mention extending their lifespan. It's a medical miracle that they didn't die on the spot." After saying this, Kevin Lestrange seemed to want to vent all his dissatisfaction on this poor guy. He continued to point at the metal warning signs around him and retorted fiercely, "Look at this, sir. What is this sign? Even if you are illiterate and don't know the words, you can understand what the pattern is. That's what you're talking about is an opportunity for wildlife contact, including black bears and mountain lions, and that's exactly what we are doing with them. We are still their dinner. And here, sir." Kevin Lestrange pointed at the uneven tiles on the manor's roof and the beams that were exposed at the eaves. "The building is a pure wooden structure, and the decoration style adopted is a gorgeous Victorian decoration. All the building materials are extremely expensive, and since no one has used or maintained it for many years, the entire building must be completely strengthened or rebuilt. So we spent the $2,000 million you mentioned, and in the end we bought a bunch of rotten wood, and you dare to recommend it? I. The bank manager was about to cry. In his eyes, the aggressive child was like a ghost that was taking his life point, but Kevin Lestrange didn't seem to want to let him go. He pointed at the other party and said solemnly, "And one last thing." And the bank manager was so frightened that he collapsed on the ground, leaning against the mottled wall. Kevin Lestrange looked down at him and emphasized righteously, "Pay attention to your identity. We are negotiating a deal now. This is your job as well as my job. When you're at work, call me by my title. Don't call me Mr. Call me Director Lestrange. I am the financial director of this company. Not a penny can flow out of the company's account without my permission. Take the contract and get out of here. I've already signed it. It's $2,000 million for this building, including 1,000 hectares of surrounding land." Just when the bank manager was frightened out of his wits, the voice from heaven finally appeared in his ears. A signed house purchase contract came out of nowhere and brought him salvation. Chapter 335, The Time of Reckoning. After watching the bank manager's trembling back as he stumbled and disappeared into the distance, Cedric turned his gaze to the side and saw Kevin Lestrange, who was sitting under a pine tree with his back to him, and Karl. The guy sat on a big rock, curled up into a ball, hugged his calves with his hands, and buried his head between his thighs. It seems to be trying to disguise itself as a mushroom that appears after the rain. Looking at the lonely figure, Cedric actually felt a little sympathy for this guy for the first time. He turned to look at Carol and said with some complaint, "You're going a little too far, Karl." Karl scratched his head helplessly, took a deep breath, and took out a pack of unopened Marlboro cigarettes from his pocket. He was about to open it, but then he looked at Cedric next to him and the sulking mushroom. He stuffed the cigarette back into his pocket somewhat helplessly, then took out 3 cigar lollipops from his ring. He handed one to Cedric, took the other 2, and walked behind Kevin Lestrange. He tapped the other person's shoulder with one of the lollipops, but he found that the other party was not moved at all. After shaking his shoulders vigorously, the mushroom turned around silently on the spot. Turned the backside toward Karl. Karl, holding 2 lollipops in his hands, must feel like a clown. But he still didn't give up. He continued to use the same routine and kept following the opponent's rotation range. Hit the other man's shoulder with the lollipop until Kevin Lestrange began to get a little agitated. While turning around, he didn't grasp the angle well and faced Karl directly. "Is it interesting, Mr. Hohenzollern? You broke the promise you made to me before. You are a man who does not keep his word. I don't want to talk to you anymore, and I will definitely do that sometime in the future." Kevin Lestrange accused Cole with red eyes, but unfortunately he didn't have time to finish. When he opened his mouth, He suddenly felt a foreign object being forced into it. He wanted to spit out the contents of his mouth quickly. But when his taste buds tasted the sweet mixture of lemon and citrus, the lollipop finally stayed in his mouth. But his mouth was closed tightly, and the stick of the lollipop made a crackling sound when he bit it. Actually, we should share cigarettes at this time. Karl looked at Kevin Lestrange, who was glaring at him, and Cedric, who was beside him, completely addicted to the sweet taste of candy. He sighed helplessly and sat down casually on the open space next to him. I tore open the wrapper of the last lollipop and stared at the crystal clear candy, but never put it into my mouth. He kept staring at the lollipop for a long time and then slowly spoke. I know I broke the promise I made before. I apologize to you. Don't doubt that this is not a joke, but please, both of you, listen to what I want to say next, and allow me to be willful for the last time, okay? When Cedric and Kevin Lestrange heard this, they were stunned for a moment, as if time had stopped for both of them. At that moment, they even forgot to breathe, and both of them turned their heads to look at Karl. Only then did they realize that the usually rebellious and beautiful face now showed many emotions they had never seen before. There is anger, unwillingness, melancholy, and helplessness. What was even more surprising was that both of them saw an undisguised fear on that face. The emotion of fear should never appear in this boy. What is there for him to be afraid of? In the wizarding world, he is a rare genius at Hogwarts and the adopted son of Headmaster Dumbledore. The only wizard who defeated Voldemort head on. He swept away most of the wealth of the entire British wizarding world. I'm afraid it won't be long before the goblins in Gringotts want to go out begging and need permission from the other party. That is even more impossible in the Muggle world. As the youngest and most legendary company CEO on Wall Street. With tens of billions of capital in his hands, the president of JP Morgan Chase and the future president of the United States have countless business dealings with him. What's more, just a few days ago, the other party used financial means to take away $500 billion in cash in the US stock market. Why would he be afraid? He has no reason to be. The two of them racked their brains, but couldn't figure it out. In Cedric's opinion, Cole was omnipotent and only others were afraid of him. In Kevin Lestrange's eyes, nothing happens without reason, and there is no reason for this guy in front of him to be afraid. The logic doesn't make sense at all, and it shouldn't be true. I know why you two look confused right now. The quiet environment was broken by Carol's words. He took a deep breath, slowly raised his hand, and pointed at the manor behind the three people. That is why I'm afraid, my dear Mr. Lestrange. I think with your level of expertise, when I informed you that you wanted to acquire the property here, you must have done a background check on the property. Tell me what you found out, Kevin. Lestrange was stunned for a second when asked this question suddenly, but he quickly got into the mood and took the lollipop out of his mouth. He spoke directly. The history of this building is very strange. I couldn't find any information about this building in the New York Housing Authority. There is no information on the relevant building materials, which means there is no information showing that anyone has purchased these woods in the building materials market. There are no tiles or bricks on the roof. It's like the building suddenly grew out of the forest. There are no traces, only a few words that seem to indicate that this was once an orphanage. Orphanage? Cedric scratched his head in confusion, but as if he had thought of something, he slowly walked to Karl's side. He squatted down, looked at the other person's face, and persuaded him with some sadness. I didn't think about the relationship between this and you. I'm sorry, we shouldn't. What? Karl turned his head slightly and looked at Cedric. His expression changed drastically from the undisguised fear before becoming a little angry and finally crazy. You shouldn't have considered my feelings, right? You shouldn't have played out a scene like this in front of the orphanage where I used to stay, right? Or do you think that I'm sad because I'm an orphan, so you should comfort me? Cedric was startled by Karl's expression and asked back with some fear, No, that's not what I meant. I just wanted to say that if you're really in pain, you should speak up. We can shoulder the burden together for you. Aren't we friends? Those bad memories are no big deal now. It's no big deal. The expression on Karl's face began to change from madness to a creepy smile. If it's just an orphan, then of course it's no big deal. Too bad it isn't. This isn't some bullshit orphanage. As he spoke, Karl suddenly turned his head and looked at Kevin Lestrange, asking loudly as if he was crazy, "Answer me, Mr. Lestrange. What else is this country called besides those beautiful titles? I know you are very smart. You never miss any details in your work. As long as something has happened in this world, it will definitely leave traces. Tell me. Say it out loud. Tell me the answer, Kevin." Lestrange stepped back again and again, his face full of confusion. He didn't dare to look up at Karl's eyes. After being silent for a long time, he spoke with difficulty in a very low voice. "A nation of pedophiles. Correct answer." Karl laughed wildly, and his laughter continued to echo in the forest, as if there were 100 evil spirits laughing loudly in the darkness between the trees. But soon, the laughter suddenly stopped, as if it had never appeared. Karl, who had already stood up, slowly closed his eyes and whispered ha 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 in his mind. "Ah, you awake. Dog system, it's time to settle accounts. At your service at any time, Great Dark Lord. You are truly beyond imagination." Chapter 336, The Mysterious Orphanage Underground. Karl didn't say another word and walked towards the building with a dark face. Looking at his back, Cedric wanted to rush over and say something to him, but Kevin Lestrange behind him grabbed his right hand. "What are you doing?" Cedric turned around and asked angrily. "What do you want to do?" Kevin Lestrange asked solemnly. "Move your pumpkin brain that is about to sprout. 1 year and 4 months, nearly 4 days and nights. This person in front of you has spent such a long time desperately trying to make money. Don't you understand by now? Understand?" "What?" Cedric's face looked very ugly, but he was not angry. Instead, his face was full of guilt. He turned his head and looked at Karl's back, wanting to understand what the other person was thinking, but he couldn't do it, or he was not qualified. "It seems that you have really been spoiled by this guy." Kevin Lestrange's cheek twitched, and there was a sour taste in his tone. He also glanced past Cedric and turned his gaze towards the back. "Money is ultimately a desire for humans. If it is a desire, then there must be something you want. No one really loves a pile of cold wealth. People tend to love the byproducts of wealth. A high social status, readily available sexual resources, a comfortable living environment, and the envious gazes of others. Even if they are simply exploiting others as capitalists, it is only to satisfy their perverted desire to torture their own kind." "What exactly do you want to say?" Cedric began to get impatient, or he wanted to escape. Avoiding the reality before his eyes. He was unwilling to admit that the guy in front of him might understand Karl better than he did. Kevin Lestrange did not notice this, or he was not interested at the moment. His eyes were all focused on the back. His eyes were firm, and he said this helplessly. "Actually, I don't have a definite answer. I just want to tell you that Karl has spent so much time and energy. He has reaped the wealth of the entire British wizarding world in the American stock market. There must be something he wants to buy with money, but one thing I can't figure out is what on earth could be so expensive." Cedric was silent. Faced with this question, he had no answer and could only follow this annoying guy silently. About 3 to 4 meters behind Karl, he followed closely and slowly walked into the manor deep in the forest. Walking into the manor, what comes into view is a spacious front yard. Although it is covered with weeds, one can still see the carefully designed garden landscape. The main building of the manor is a 3-story wooden building. The paint on the exterior wall has peeled off, revealing the original color of the wood. The windows of the building are inlaid with colored glass, and the sunlight shines through the windows onto the floor, creating mottled light and shadows. Arriving at the gate of the main building of the manor, Karl had no intention of speaking and simply tore off the bank property sign on the door. Then he gave a standard side kick and kicked open the long closed door. The iron door bolt, which had long been corroded by rust, completely collapsed under the force of this kick, and the 2 solid wooden door panels fell directly to the ground. Circles of dust were stirred up, and under the sunlight, there was a strange haziness when entering the building. The first thing that catches your eye is the spacious lobby. An exquisite crystal chandelier hangs from the high ceiling, Although it is covered with dust, it still flickers with a faint light point. The walls are decorated with oil paintings in gold-rimmed frames. The characters in the paintings are dressed in gorgeous clothes and smile, as if telling about the happy times in the past. However, these paintings have faded and become damaged due to long-term neglect. Walking along the red carpeted corridor, you can see that the doors of the rooms on both sides are closed. The carvings on the doors are complex and exquisite, revealing a hint of mystery. Kevin Lestrange pushed open one of the doors expressionlessly, revealing a spacious living room with classic Victorian style furniture. Heavy wooden sofas and chairs were intricately carved and covered in faded silk fabrics. Looking at the decorations inside, he couldn't help but frown. Just as he was about to take a closer look, Cedric next to him suddenly tugged at his sleeve, pointing in Karl's direction. He turned around and found that he didn't seem to have any interest in the surrounding rooms. He walked straight to the end of the corridor. The two people behind him looked at each other and could only put aside their curiosity temporarily and follow each other closely. When he reached the end of the corridor, Kevin Lestrange's face became even uglier. It was a hidden passage. It is hidden at the end of the entire corridor, and there is a locked wooden door in front. The brass door lock was not broken by Karl, but it was not because he was in a good mood. On the contrary, there was a hole in the middle of the mottled door that was made by a fist. To show how bad his mood was, Karl punched through the rotten door panel. Then he reached into the hole and unlocked the door from the back. A staircase leading to the underground appeared in front of the three people. Karl still didn't say anything and walked down the stairs with an expressionless face. Kevin Lestrange and Cedric, who were following behind him, looked at each other and then followed. But the further Cedric walked, the cooler the air around him became, as if they were about to walk straight into hell through this staircase. Just when he was feeling a little scared about the unknown ahead, Karl in front of him suddenly stopped and turned his head slightly to look at the two people still standing on the stairs. He gave a weird smile. "We are here, gentlemen. Welcome to my home until I was 10 years old." After saying that, Karl turned slightly sideways and pushed open the heavy metal airtight door in front of him. After a burst of irritating metal friction noise, Cedric suddenly felt that his previous guess might be correct and they might really have arrived in hell. The scene before them was shocking and despairing. Judging from the few words Karl had said before, this was the mysterious orphanage. An orphanage located in the basement of a luxurious manor. The walls are covered with cracks and stains, and the air is filled with damp and moldy smells. The environment is reminiscent of a mental hospital, with shabby beds, tables, and chairs placed in the narrow corridors and dim light bulbs hanging on the walls, emitting a weak light. There was a depressing and dull atmosphere in the air, making people feel suffocated. The blue-gray tiles, illuminated by the white filament bulbs, make people feel cold, and there are no bright colors anywhere to be seen. I haven't seen any decent children's toys. Instead, following Carol's steps, Cedric suddenly discovered that there seemed to be a huge space next to the corridor. Driven by curiosity, he slowly pushed open the door of the room and found that this was not like the backstage of some stage. Rows of dressing tables with light bulbs were neatly placed on the side, and countless brightly colored clothes appeared in the open wardrobe behind her. When he first saw it, Cedric couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, but when he got closer, his body couldn't help but tremble. He slammed his last punch on the wardrobe and yelled loudly, "These people are more evil than Voldemort." Chapter 337 Unspeakable Sin. Are you so restrained, even when you curse at others? Kevin Lestrange's voice came from behind. Cedric turned his head and found that the other party had come into the room at some point and was opening another locked wardrobe. Looking at the colorful and thin clothes full of sexual connotations, there was a strange smile on his face. He took out the smallest of the pieces and deliberately held it up to the light to look at it. The white light filtering through the gaps in the lace fabric. A shadow covered his face, making it difficult to see his expression. "What? A bunch of beasts. I thought I had done enough research on the limits of human beings, but I never expected that this would become a subject that I could only approach but never reach. Do you think I can wear this dress? I guess not. I'm only 11 years old. It seems like what they are playing is really perverted." After saying that, Kevin Lestrange casually threw the new toy in his hand aside and slowly walked towards the door at the back of the house. He took a deep breath, as if he had made up his mind, and opened the door in front of him. Looking at the scene behind the door, he could only stand there and shake his head. There is a long T stage in front of me, and I'm right behind it. I just need to turn a corner to start the show. Looking at the luxurious seats arranged around the stage, he suddenly felt that those bastards in the French Ministry of Magic didn't seem to be that bad after all. At most, they just use the power in their hands to squeeze some benefits out of their own family. Compared to everything I see now, it is as pure as a white lotus. What is this? Cedric's big head popped up at some point. He looked at the strange building in front of him and asked in confusion, "You should have the answer in your heart." Kevin Lestrange ignored him and looked quietly at the T stage in front of him. There was a hint of dissatisfaction in his expression, and he turned his head slightly and stared at Cedric with his eyes slanted. "Stop trying to avoid what you've seen. I've seen you read many books about Muggle society when you were in the dormitory. You can't be ignorant of everything. You want to escape. You are indeed very kind. I see a kind of kindness in you that has not been contaminated by anything. Unfortunately, kindness always comes with a strong side effect, which is that it makes people weak and unwilling to accept the evil of reality." As he spoke, Kevin Lestrange stretched out his right hand and pointed back at the dressing tables and the sexy lingerie in the closets. He said with a grim look, Does this need any further explanation? Forcing those young children to wear those shameful clothes and walk onto the stage, it can't be for fashion. It's more of a commercial performance, just like the conveyor belt sushi in a Japanese restaurant. Put them on the conveyor belt one by one, ready for selection at any time. They do look like meat. After all, in the eyes of those beasts, aren't they also a pile of meat waiting to be eaten? Shut up. Cedric screamed like crazy. Karl, Karl, Karl. He kept shouting Karl's name, then rushed out of the room as if possessed, and began searching in the corridor. The two men didn't have to search for too long, because they found some marks made of chocolate beans on the road in the corridor. Following this line of sweet and fragrant markings, the two people didn't know how many rooms they had passed through. The rooms were basically shaped like prison cells, with black cast iron doors with numbers painted on them in white. Looking at those numbers, Kevin Lestrange gave his own judgment directly. Even numbered ones should represent girls, and odd numbered ones should represent boys. The numbers are divided separately, so it's easy to guess. Karl. But at this time, Cedric had no interest in listening to the other party's explanation. He desperately called out Karl's name. The sound continued to echo in the narrow corridor until a soft response came from the end of the corridor. Stop yelling, I'm here. Hearing this, Cedric rushed towards the direction of the sound like a madman, followed closely by Kevin Lestrange. Soon the two followed the chocolate landmark and found Karl. In fact, he was sitting quietly on a bed, savoring the lollipop he had just unwrapped. As soon as he saw the two people, Karl gave a warm smile and pointed to the two chairs that were ready. Come and sit down. There's no need to shout or be surprised. Hearing this, Kevin Lestrange sat down directly on a chair, while Cedric stood stubbornly at the door with no intention of sitting down. Carol didn't force the other party. He just pointed a finger around and smiled. To be honest, I have returned to this place in my dreams countless nights. At that time, I often sat on this bed, look up at the sky. This is the only place in the orphanage where you can see the moon. Of course, sometimes you can't see it. Karl's voice was very strange, like he was speaking calmly, but when you listened carefully, you could hear an unknown despair. Kevin Lestrange lowered his head and looked around carefully. This was a room that was different from others compared to the completely enclosed prison-like rooms they had seen before. This place could be called a luxurious villa. There is a large single bed, a desk, a wardrobe and everything you need. Even on the grassy floor, you can see some old toys. That's right, the floor of this room is much more vibrant than those bare concrete floors, and lush green grass covers the entire floor. It brings a unique vitality to the room, and the reason is very simple. Just as Karl said, this is the only place in the entire basement where you can see the sun and the moon. In the center of the roof of the room, there is a small skylight of about 2 square meters under the cover of gray glass. A ray of warm sunlight shines in, allowing life to grow tenaciously. I don't know how long I've been here, because there is no accurate date or distinction between day and night, and most of the children here can't tell the difference. How many days have passed? Only during the annual physical examination can we know how old we are. Karl stroked the dust on the edge of the bed and slowly closed his eyes. Kevin Lestrange looked at him, thought for a long time, and finally spoke. I never imagined that you had ever experienced something like this. Everything here is filled with sin, but I still can't figure it out. What is your purpose in coming back here? What do you want me to do? The words stopped abruptly. Kevin Lestrange's cheeks twitched, his pupils dilated, and an indescribable feeling of unwillingness surged in his heart. He knew that he had already lost when he asked this question, because that damn pumpkin head suddenly pounced on Karl and covered his ears with both hands, as if he was afraid that he would hear the noise here. Right in front of him. The scene before him confused his mind. Until Karl's voice sounded again. Some people never grow up. Thank you for your warm hug, Mr. Diggory, but I need revenge more now. Chapter 338, Envy and Showdown. Okay, the sweet memories and revisiting of old places are over. It's time to do some serious work. Karl patted Cedric on the shoulder, signaling him to let him go. As a result, this guy was very stubborn and stared at Karl's eyes and refused to let go. Carol had no choice but to promise. I won't do anything to hurt myself. You know I'm not that stupid. I'm very healthy inside now. It can even be considered joyful, like a child who has longed for a toy and finally saved enough money. I went back to that old store to buy the toys I wanted. Hearing this, Cedric looked at him with complicated eyes and slowly released his hands that were covering the other's ears. He stood up and stood aside with his head down in silence, while Carol shrugged his shoulders and walked out the door with an indifferent look on his face, greeting him as he walked. If you still want to visit this place, I can give you some time and take some photos. After all, this place will disappear soon, so it's good to leave some traces. I will still leave traces for you and wait for you outside. After saying that, Carol turned around and left until his back disappeared at the end of the deep corridor. Kevin Lestrange, who had been standing aside, spoke with a grim face. He lied to you. There has been some disruption in his ability to organize his language, including his subtle movements. We should have noticed it when we first walked in, when he was sitting on that bed, even if he was distracting himself with a lollipop in his mouth. My body is still shaking uncontrollably. This is a typical symptom of stress trauma. It's understandable if you think about it. It is undeniable that you are the most beautiful human being I have ever seen. Please allow me to only use this title without distinguishing by gender. A beautiful angel is trapped in hell. His fate is predictable. Every devil here wants to taste him. I wonder if there is. Stop talking. Cedric, who had been silent with his head down, suddenly yelled and pushed Kevin Lestrange against the wall. He grabbed the other's shoulders tightly with both hands and said with a ferocious look, "Don't say any more, and don't say this in front of Carol. You will destroy him. I know he lied to me. I know, but, what?" Kevin Lestrange, who was pressed against the wall, still had an extremely calm expression on his face. He raised his eyelids slightly and stared at Cedric. "But you can't do anything, right? You can't change the past, nor can you change the slightly foolish kindness in your heart. Your character determines that you cannot think like me and Mr. Hohenzollern. As time goes by, it will become increasingly difficult for you to stand by his side, because when he has completely said goodbye to this memory, I think about what he will do next. It could be crazier or more evil than anything that's going on here, and there's nothing you can do to help him." Cedric's taut hands seemed to lose strength in an instant, and he let go of the bastard in front of him. He leaned against the wall in a daze, with a lonely expression on his face. Kevin Lestrange, who was released, straightened his collar, which was messed up by the other party, and turned around and walked towards the door. When he reached the door, he turned his head slightly and looked at Cedric out of the corner of his eyes, took a deep breath, and said sourly, "Stop pretending to be dead. Get out of this damn place right away. Stop thinking about those problems with your brain. Don't try to learn my way of doing things, because once you learn it, you will be completely worthless around that guy. To be honest, I'm really jealous of you. He is so tolerant and doting on you. He hasn't even made any direct demands on your work. He tried so hard to teach you, but you rejected those teachings in your heart. But he didn't get angry, perhaps. From the very beginning, it was a pure kindness in your heart that attracted him. Just like the grass in this house, the plants growing in hell will always unconsciously yearn for the warm Sunday. As he spoke, Kevin Lestrange disappeared, leaving only the long echo echoing in the corridor. One more thing. I said this just to express my emotion. It doesn't mean I will give up. I will still prove it to Mr. Hohenzollern. I am the only one who is most qualified to stand beside him. You are far from qualified. The sound disappeared, and Cedric, who was leaning against the wall, slowly raised his head and looked up. The bright sunlight shines through the yellowed and mottled glass, casting the purest warmth in the world into this small room. The room is closed, and there is not much air circulation around it, but the grass is growing tenaciously under the pure wooden floor, as if swaying with the sunlight. Cedric stretched out a hand and stroked the blades of grass. When his fingers felt the real presence, he suddenly stood up and rushed out of the room at an extremely fast speed. Follow the road sign made of chocolate beans and run towards the destination point. After wandering in the maze-like corridor for a long time, Cedric finally arrived at his destination point. The moment he rushed out of the corridor, the dazzling sunlight and hot air almost knocked him to the ground. It turned out that this corridor led to the back of the entire manor, which was a small hill in the middle of the forest with no trees around it. Surrounded by trees is a wide open space covered with snow. At this moment, Cole was walking back and forth in the white space, holding a bunch of purple roses. He walked very slowly and would suddenly stop every few steps, bend down and insert a flower into the snow. This action seemed to have been repeated many times, and the white space in front of him had gradually been covered by purple flowers. Cedric stood by, watching Cole quietly, and Kevin Lestrange did the same. But this guy didn't know where he was from. He got two huge oil drums, which seemed much taller than his current height, and sat on them. He kept blowing into his hands and shaking his two short legs. Finally, after waiting for who knows how long, Cal bent down and placed the last purple rose under his feet. Then he straightened up and stretched, turned around to see the two men standing behind him, and smiled. It seems that there was a slight error in my assessment of the situation. You are much faster than I expected. What do these flowers mean? Kevin Lestrange asked directly. Nothing, just some memorial services. Carl still smiled and replied, these are the children who died in the building behind you. It's ironic that when they first saw the sun, the place they arrived at was their own cemetery. Chapter 339. Carl 039's past. As he spoke, Carl paused and looked up at the sun in the sky. When I left here, it was winter, and the sun was as strong as it is now. Can you tell me in detail what happened? It was Kevin Lestrange who asked the question. His face was calm, as if he was asking the other person what he had eaten in the evening. Carol did the same, smiling and speaking calmly. It's no big deal. According to the medical examination report they conducted on me at that time, my body should have reached the standard of a 10-year-old. It's almost time for us to make our debut. You should understand what this debut means. You haven't been. Cedric raised his head suddenly and looked at Cole with a look of unsuppressible surprise. By what? Cole caught the emotions in the other person's eyes. His calm expression began to fluctuate, and his voice gradually became higher. If you're talking about physical defilement and torture, then there really wasn't any. I was a very special person in that orphanage. I still have some confidence in my personal charm. The food I eat is nutritionally balanced, and I even have someone special to take care of my diet and daily life. I even had time to read a lot of books in that little room, including a lot of philosophy and politics. They carefully trained me just to make me more valuable. I was even assigned a special playmate. She was a very ordinary girl who never told me her name, just as my number was 0. Her number is also very unique. It is the number 2. Cedric could see that Cole was trying to stay calm, but he couldn't seem to suppress his anger anymore, because she took care of me. She didn't have to endure those humiliations. At that time, I could already feel the presence of the magical power in my body. I once promised her that, when I have full control over the power, I will take her away from this hellhole, let her feel the real sunshine. But Karl's sapphire-like eyes began to fill with angry red, and his expression was awkward and terrifying. It was as if there were two souls fighting inside him. After a brief silence, he spoke again, this time with unreserved anger. But I broke my promise. After that night, I wanted to wait another 24 hours until I could fully control the magic in my body. I came to implement the escape plan, but what I didn't expect was that they actually put sleeping pills in our food. When I woke up, she had disappeared. I banged on the door like crazy, and the loud echoes kept reverberating in the corridor until I used magic for the first time and forcibly shattered the bulletproof glass on the door, using the broken glass shards to hold my wrists against them. When I threatened to commit suicide to intimidate those guys, I finally saw their bodies. Karl took a deep breath, turned around and walked towards the back of the clearing. He took out his wand and cast a blasting spell, blowing the trees blocking the way ahead into pieces amid the flying wood chips. The two people behind him saw two tombstones, one large and one small, in front of Karl. Karl slowly squatted down and stroked the small tombstone. In fact, it was not a tombstone at all, but just a relatively large pebble. He lowered his head, his eyes were red, and his voice was already hoarse. When I saw her again, she was wearing that disgusting clothing. Even with that thin clothing, you have been torn beyond recognition, and there is not a single spot on your exposed white skin that is free of scars. Purple bruises and clotted red wounds covered her body, and long red hair covered her face. At that time, I didn't even have the courage to lift up those hair to look at her face. But then what? Kevin Lestrange spoke again, but this time his question was a little hesitant. Then things are very simple. Karl stood up, turned and looked at the two of them, still with that signature smile on his face. I didn't think about controlling the magic in my body. It was a terrifying explosion of magic, like a heavy bomb exploding in the basement. The shockwave swept through the entire basement, which is why it looked so horrible when you saw it. But fortunately, when this place was built, those big shots valued their lives and built the basement to be exceptionally solid. Otherwise, this manor would have disappeared from the face of the earth long ago. In other words, you killed all the people buried here. Kevin Lestrange looked at Cole with some surprise. You can't say that. Karl can't control his magic. This is a normal magic riot. It's just that hearing this, Cedric hurriedly wanted to help Carol explain. Carol didn't seem to appreciate it, and nodded slightly and said calmly, yes, all the people buried here were killed and buried by me personally, except for these two. After the incident, those big shots fled in all directions, and no one cared whether there were any survivors in the basement. It took me 24 hours to drag these people out of that hell along this passage, and then buried them all here, so I remember where each of them was buried. If that's the case, then the story is complete. Kevin Lestrange spoke again, his expression still calm. Then, why did you come back here? For all the people buried here, I believe they should thank you. It's better to be buried in the sunlight than to be used as a sex toy and toyed to death in a dark basement. You are very lucky. Rather than saying you killed them, it's better to say you saved them. After all, I think if you can control the magic power accurately, you should be able to escape with the girl. But after your most important cargo escapes, those people will decide that this place is unsafe, and the remaining people will either be killed to silence them, or thrown into some dark corner to slowly rot. Either they are moved to a new place and continue to be sold as goods, which is the best outcome. Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Kevin Lestrange. Karl smiled self-deprecatingly and shook his head. But I will not accept what you said. Murder is murder. No matter how noble the reason is, it cannot cover up the fact I never felt like I saved them. All I wanted was revenge. As he spoke, he patted the huge tombstone next to him and spoke with a strange expression. An Now that I can finally realize my revenge plan, I have saved enough money. It's time to start settling accounts. Settlement? Of what? Cedric asked in confusion, pointing at the tombstone. Liquidate a dead person. That's right. Without my permission, and before he completes his revenge. Why should he die? Even if he dies, he can only die in my hands. Even if he has gone to hell, I will buy him back from the hands of the god of death, until I complete my revenge on him. He can't die without my permission. Karl laughed maniacally. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 340, Professor Snape and the Strange Potion. After saying that, Karl took out a gold galleon from his arms. Looking at the shining gold coin, Kevin Lestrange couldn't help but joke. Although, I don't understand what you just said. If you really have mastered some powerful magic that can bring people back to life, if it requires a huge amount of wealth to support it, then one gold coin is a bit too shabby. Of course. Karl responded with a smile. This is not a gold coin, but a portkey to teleport Professor Snape here. After all, it's about revenge and retaliation, so we must think of the means of revenge in the past years. Every night I think about how to make this guy's death process slower and more painful after he is resurrected. After saying this, Cole took out his magic wand, threw the gold coin into the air, and shot out a silver gray magic light to hit it point. The moment the light hit the gold coin, the surrounding space began to distort. After a loud bang, a black shadow slowly landed on the ground. Long time no see, Professor Snape. You've gained some weight. When Karl saw Professor Snape for the first time, he started to greet him as usual, but he soon discovered that he was different from before. Her previously deep and round cheeks had become fuller, and her body was no longer as thin and slender as before. His tall stature and muscular build completely held up the dark robe, making him look less eerie and scary than before. Instead, he looks more like a handsome uncle wearing different clothes. It seems love really does make flesh grow on a person. You look much more handsome than you did 2 months ago, Karl then teased the other party. HMPH. Professor Snape snorted coldly and took out a bottle of blood red potion from his sleeve point, and in the process of taking it, a defensive magic shining with a faint blue light was added to the hand. Your evil is indeed beyond my imagination. You can even get this ancient potion formula. To be honest, I'm really curious. Apart from Dumbledore, who else could have such a collection? Moreover, you seem to have determined from the beginning that you could obtain the formula of this potion, and even staged a big drama for it. Even I was the target of your calculations. While handing the potion to Karl, Professor Snape couldn't help but make a joke. What are you talking about? It's just a carefully planned coincidence. Karl took the potion with his bare hands and said with a cunning smile, I can't predict everything, but I always have a backup plan. Even if the old guy doesn't have one, I can find a way to do it, but it will take more time. HMPH. Professor Snape snorted again with disdain, his eyes fixed on Karl's hand holding the potion bottle. Advised quietly, if I were you, I wouldn't be stupid enough to touch that thing with my hands, even if there's a layer of glass between them. But who can guarantee that this evil thing will not affect people's souls? You need to know the process of brewing this thing, more like a pot of evil broth made by mixing 10 souls and bodies together. What are you talking about? Cedric, who had been standing aside, listened to the conversation between Karl and Professor Snape. Feeling a little dizzy, he couldn't help but ask, what on earth is this potion? What exactly does it do? Can a bottle of potion bring the dead back to life, dear Mr. Diggory? Upon hearing this, Professor Snape immediately changed back to his familiar appearance and began to spray venom at Cedric. Every time I hear you ask such stupid questions, I always feel that my IQ is so outstanding. You are an excellent student in every course, but why do you always seem so stupid when it comes to routine questions? As he spoke, the old bat glared at Cole with his eyes slanted and spoke sarcastically. It seems that love can indeed make people grow flesh and blood. I just hope that those unnecessary tissues will never grow in the brain, so as not to affect normal intellectual development and make people look like a giant monster with a runny nose. Oh my god, are you holding a grudge like that? Hearing this, Karl couldn't help but look at Professor Snape in surprise. Compared to this guy, I think I'm magnanimous, repay evil with kindness, put aside past grudges, and I'm generous and tolerant. But it doesn't matter anymore. There's still a long way to go in the future, so I just need to slowly settle every account. But now he had more important accounts to settle, so he looked directly at Cedric and spoke. This potion cannot bring the dead back to life. Professor Snape just emphasized that this potion is dangerous because this potion is made from the remains of 10 powerful wizards during their lifetime, plus the souls within those remains. The process is disgusting anyway. As for the effect, it can't bring people back to life, but it can make people immortal for a certain period of time. What? Cedric and Kevin Lestrange exclaimed at the same time, staring at the bottle of potion in Karl's hand. Then they asked at the same time. I am a little puzzled, Mr. Hohenzollern, although you have not yet told me the identity of the person buried here, but he must be your enemy, or the object of your revenge. You actually want to use magic to grant him immortality. Carol, you can't do this. This is a very vicious black magic. You can't play with people's souls. Facing the two people's questioning, Karl chuckled and his eyes kept scanning between the two people. Finally it stopped at Kevin Lestrange. Don't get me wrong, Mr. Lestrange. Do you think I'm someone who would make a loss? I will indeed grant the other party immortality for a period of time, but everything has two sides. Sometimes eternal life is a blessing, but sometimes it can be a terrible curse. After saying that, Karl looked at Cedric again and said with a calm expression, as for your question, Mr. Diggory, please rest assured that I have made a promise to a certain old fellow and will never stay in Hogwarts or the British wizarding world. They are doing some dark magic experiments that are harmful to the world, and they can't just kill innocent people. These are the raw materials for this batch of potions. They are the 10 dark wizards who attacked Hogwarts, and some of the remaining souls of Voldemort who was defeated by me. I don't think this can be considered a crime. It's more like making the best use of resources. After all, I spent a lot of money in the process of repairing Hogwarts. It's only natural that I get some compensation. Besides, how could I let my dear professor do such despicable things? As he spoke, Karl turned to look at Professor Snape and gave a smile as warm as the sun. Professor Snape's fist hardened as he looked at that smiling face. He held it in for a while before responding through gritted teeth. Then, I really want to thank you, my dear student. Chapter 341, System Appearance and the Magic of the Second Chapter. There are no problems now. After getting the evaluation he deserved from Professor Snape. Karl looked at the three people present with a smile on his face. After receiving an affirmative response, he closed his eyes and began to communicate with the dog system in his mind. Let's get started. After more than a year of preparation, it's time to reap the rewards. It took more than 500 days to earn this many points. It's really inefficient. You are joking, sir. Among all the people we have served in the past, your playing style is the most advanced one. You are not overly obsessed with those powerful black magics, nor are you obsessed with those low-level desires. You have clear goals and strong means. Of course, you are sometimes soft-hearted, but this better reflects your greatness. After all, every villain has to have some weaknesses, otherwise it would be too boring. Shut your stinky mouth. I'm not interested in hearing you nag. Give me what I want. No problem. The host redeems 1000 million villain points and obtains the ultimate magic holy grail of wishing, which can fulfill any wish you want. You can bring the dead back to life, or make someone fall in love with you forever, or tamper with history to change fate. Please choose your own direction carefully, because the next exchange amount will be 10 times the current amount. Are you sure? Karl, who was in the memory palace, looked at the huge red button in front of him and pressed it without any hesitation. The host has determined the direction of use. Remember to perform perfectly during use, so that people around you will believe that this is your unique ability. Let us enter the next stage and let the whole world feel the coming of a new dark age. Hehe. Listening to the shrill laughter, Karl used magic to block the sound with some annoyance, and then looked at the demonstration video displayed on the screen with some embarrassment. You have to be so chunny by now. You still want to trick me even at this time. You really can't change your bad habits, Karl complained helplessly. He took a deep breath, returned to reality from the memory palace, and suddenly raised his right hand in front of the three people. He began the performance in an extremely chunibao tone. The name of the dark, the sleep of the secret, the summon of the soul, the door of life and death, the world of the world. His voice was low and powerful, and every word was full of magic. Combined with his current body movements and expressions, the three people behind him were stunned. His face was full of confusion. What kind of magic was this? Could it be that such powerful magic was hidden in that eastern island country? Just as they were puzzled, as the spell continued, the air around them began to distort, and countless phantoms suddenly appeared around them. On the flat ground that was empty just now, there suddenly appeared mountains of gold coins and piles of green banknotes as big as small hills. The number of brand new US dollars was so huge that it directly covered the entire forest. Everyone seemed to be placed in a sea of gold coins and green banknotes. Looking at those dazzling treasures, they either sparkle with an alluring golden luster, or have a peculiar scent of ink. But looking at those lights, and smelling those scents, they seemed to be able to hear the whispers of countless human desires. Desire. Quote, gold medium, long sleep li-fi, dead person human world. Karl continued to chant, his voice revealing an unquestionable determination. It was as if a fanatical believer was using the most beautiful words to sing praises to the Messiah in his heart. As the magic deepened, the gold coins and banknotes began to melt, turning into black smoke, and blending with the surrounding cold wind. The entire space was filled with a strange atmosphere, as if time and space had frozen at this moment. Suddenly, a blinding light burst out from the center of the room, covering everything in white light. As the light gradually dissipated, a figure slowly walked out of the light. It was a white man as fat as a pig. He was pale, with a look of morbid weakness and obesity, and his eyes flashed with a complex light, showing both confusion and desire. He kept looking around, until he saw the tombstone behind him. When he saw the words on the tombstone, his eyes were filled with fear. He began to reach out, and touch his face and body, pinching here and there, until he was sure that this body of his was not an illusion. The fear in his eyes immediately turned into ecstasy, until a cold voice came from behind him. Long time no see, Mr. Epstein. The voice seemed to be the whisper of a demon from hell, causing him to shudder all over and twist his fat pig-like body. He turned around with difficulty, but was greeted by a powerful straight punch. Karl, with his tie wrapped around his right hand, punched the guy directly in the face. The huge force caused ripples on the guy's facial fat. A tooth flew out of his mouth and blood filled his entire mouth. Who are you? What do you want to do? The speech was forcibly interrupted, and Karl punched him directly on the ribs on the lower right side of the body, which is where the human pain nerves are most densely concentrated. The force of this punch was so great that it directly penetrated the opponent's fat that was several centimeters thick. The severe pain made this guy unable to utter a word. He could only retch. But this was not the end, as Karl continued to beat him brutally with punch after punch. It seemed as if he was treating his opponent as a soft and comfortable punching bag, throwing small straight punches, long swinging punches, uppercuts and lower hooks. Karl's movements were swift and fierce, and each punch hit the opponent's vital points, but cleverly avoided the opponent's brain nerve connections and some important internal organs. This was a professional and brutal beating that could cause great pain to the person being beaten. However, it can also prevent the other party from fainting due to ruptured internal organs or sudden lack of oxygen to the brain. It was not until 5 minutes later that Karl, who was already soaked all over, took off the tie soaked in the other party's blood. He stretched out his right hand and waved behind him. He can't open his mouth anymore. His teeth need to be fixed so he can drink the potion. Bring me some tools. Hearing this, Professor Snape and Cedric were visibly stunned. They stood there blankly, looking at Karl, who was sweating profusely. Excuse me, Kevin Lestrange, holding a huge wrench in his hand, pushed the two people in front of him. Under the shocked gaze of the two people, he handed the wrench to Karl, then returned to the oil barrel he had just made, as if nothing had happened, and shook his short legs. "Thank you." Looking at the wrench in his hand, Cole gasped and thanked him. "That's my job." Kevin Lestrange responded with a smile, then looked at Cedric, who was still looking at him in shock. He said somewhat eccentrically, "A professional subordinate must have insight into the heart of the boss he serves, so as to provide the best service that the boss wants most. I said it was just my job, not like someone was totally unprofessional." Chapter 342, Killing and Destroying ONEN-039's Heart and a 50-year sentence. "So what if I did all this? I was the one who killed that girl. You and me are all what I want. Those people are not my clients. I have all the leverage over them, and I'm the one who is profiting from them. I am the master behind this. I don't know what tricks you are playing. Let me go from here immediately, otherwise, those guys will never let you go. I only need to use the little bit of information from those videos to make sure you die without a burial place. Don't you know their identities?" The potion began to work, and the wounds on Epstein's body began to heal slowly, even though the severe pain made his face distorted like a demon. But this does not stop him from uttering harsh words, which is a perfectly normal emotional expression for humans. After being brutally beaten, there are often two emotions. One is extremely negative silence, silently enduring everything. Others, under the stimulation of adrenaline, began to become extremely angry. Obviously this guy is the latter. He even tried hard to get his fat body up from the ground. Unfortunately, just as his knees were about to straighten, Karl took out an M1911 from his ring. He shot the guy in the knee. The .45 caliber bullet shattered his knee directly, leaving him half kneeling on the ground. "I'm not satisfied with your answer, and there is nothing new about it." Karl was still squatting on the ground, staring into the other person's eyes, the smile on his face never fading. He snapped his fingers, and 3 newspapers, driven by the levitation spell, slowly floated in front of the guy. While Epstein was checking, Cole was playing with his pistol. "Look carefully at the text above. If you still know English, these are 3 business suicides and an accidental fire. Your ex-wife, your mistress, your illegitimate child, and your private apartment in Pennsylvania. They all died so cleanly. The truck and the gunshot in the back must have been done by the FBI. After all, if it was the CIA, they would have been dumped in an unknown lake, or be built into the foundation of a building, still contributing to this great country." As he spoke, Karl suddenly fired another shot, breaking the opponent's other intact knee. "When you read, you should be serious. Hold your head high to see what is going on, and read every word carefully. This is impossible. This is impossible." Epstein screamed like crazy, his eye sockets whose wounds had finally healed. He opened his eyes too wide and started bleeding again, and fear exploded in his heart. The words before him clearly told him that he had been abandoned by those people. Even though he had planned all of this, even if he thought he had the upper hand over those people, he only needed to publish his list. It would completely end the political career of any one of them. But now, every line of text and every photo before him told him that he was just a piece of paper used to wipe their butts. You can discard it at will after use. You are really disgusting, not only because of what you did, but more because of your IQ. Even in school, all bad students will understand one thing, that is, if everyone does a bad thing, it will be done by everyone. That means no one has done it. The videos and evidence you collected are completely useless. Anyone who dares to reveal even a little bit of this is equivalent to going against all of them. If a person wants to take all the chips on the table, he will inevitably be the first to be eliminated. Karl looked directly into Epstein's eyes, watching the other's eyes turn into despair as deep as the abyss. He showed a very satisfied smile, but it was far from enough. Karl forcibly grabbed his hair and dragged him to the front of the tombstone. He used magic to clear away the weeds under the tombstone, pointed at the words on it, and spoke word by word. "Look carefully at this name, Karl Hohenzollern. Don't doubt that even your body was dug out by me from that dark place. Even this tombstone and the cemetery were made by me. You never thought that I would be the only person in this world who cares about you. It turned out to be me, and I really missed you, sir. I think all the time about how to bring you back into this world. Then I will personally push you into the real hell. You must be very moved. But we agreed that you can be moved, but don't feel grateful, otherwise I'd feel sick. What? Epstein, whose hair was grabbed by Karl, let out a ghostly roar. He used every ounce of strength in his body and tried to bang his head against the tombstone point. The force was so great that he even tore off part of his scalp point. Unfortunately, Cole was faster, and he directly confined the opponent to the spot with one move point. Then he took out a square cement box from his ring. The box was not big enough to hold the person point. There would only be a tiny gap left at the top of the head. Karl used the levitation spell to put the other person into the cement box point. Then he jumped to the top of the concrete box and looked down at the ugly face that looked as pale as death. Please, rest assured that your life will not end at this moment. In fact, your life will be extended for a considerable period of time. Having said that, Karl deliberately turned his head to look at Professor Snape and asked seriously, Professor, from your professional perspective, how long can the effect of the potion last? Professor Snape saw Cole with a dark face. He witnessed the whole process of how this little guy in front of him used the method he had mentioned before to kill people and destroy their hearts from both the physical and psychological perspective. The process of completely destroying that ugly mountain monster was indeed not a pretty sight point, but he did not say anything to stop him because he knew that this little bastard in front of him was indeed a little crazy and undisciplined sometimes, but everything the other party does will be in line with his bottom line point. So Professor Snape spoke directly. When you asked me to brew the potion, you didn't tell me about this guy's size and weight. Take this into consideration. The drug's effects last about 50 years and are renewed every 24 hours. It's a little below my expectations. After hearing the answer, Karl seemed a little disappointed, but he quickly cheered up. Soon he smiled again and looked at Epstein in the cement coffin. You may not have understood our conversation just now, but you should have felt the difference in your body. Simply put, your body regenerates itself every 24 hours. No matter what torture you endured the day before, your body will recover to its original state so that it can meet the next challenge. And this is the container you are in now, the sewage treatment grid at the 4th nuclear power plant. This kind of thing will never be opened since it is produced because of the radiation. You will be buried at the bottom of the new nuclear power plant here in the future, and your body will be used to filter the nuclear wastewater. The wastewater heated by the reactor, with its extremely high temperature and radiation, will flow through every inch of your skin. Under the blessing of the drug, you can see with your own eyes the radioactive wastewater flowing over your head, and every inch of your skin is slowly cooked by the heat, and it will continue like this until 50 years later. Chapter 343 The Most Desperate Punishment. And Lily, no, fear, exploded in Epstein's heart, and his eyes, which had been empty just now, were now filled with despair and fear compared to the inner despair and the collapse of fantasy. The destruction of the body is actually not that terrible point for a person whose soul has been lost. Death may be a relief. What is truly terrifying is being unable to die. 50 years, nearly 18,000 days and nights. Kill me. No, let me go back immediately. I don't belong here. I'm already dead. I'm already dead. I have paid for my crimes. I'm dead. Epstein screamed desperately. He wanted to twist his body and end the fear in his heart through self-harm. However, he found that, because of his fat body, he was trapped in the concrete coffin and could not move even a little bit. The young man who was looking at him with a smile even deprived him of the right to commit suicide. Stop yelling. Karl jumped off the concrete box, took out his wand, and waved it gently. A reinforced concrete block weighing several tons slowly fell down under the pull of magic. The sunlight disappeared bit by bit. Darkness gradually fell, and Epstein, trapped in the cement coffin, screamed frantically with all his might. But he could not stop the darkness from enveloping him. Until the last ray of light disappeared, he heard the familiar boy's voice again. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that the girl's name is Natalia Hohenzollern. I gave her the name. She was a beautiful Slavic girl. Even in despair, I still chose this name. I'm Sure you understand the meaning of this name. It comes from the Latin name Natalia, which means Christmas. In a Slavic context it often means to be reborn, to remember this name and to embrace your new life. Finally, I'll leave you with one final word. Today is Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas to you, Mr. Epstein. After some heartwarming holiday wishes, the reinforced concrete block fell completely, and Karl used magic to completely seal the seal point under the isolation of the thick steel bars and concrete. The horse shouting completely disappeared, and the whole earth returned to peace point. Of course, that was just a delusion. Karl had imagined many times how he would enjoy inner peace. After completing his revenge point, maybe I can sit on the edge of a majestic mountain cliff and wait for the sunset alone point, just like every villain hopes to live a happy retirement life after achieving his ideals. But the reality was unexpected. After the pig slaughtering like shouting disappeared, the quarreling noise that was covered up by it poured directly into Karl's ears. Let go of my hair, you shorty, you should be the one to let go, you stupid pumpkin head with a negative IQ. While Cole was performing his revenge drama, Cedric and Kevin Lestrange continued their childish and ridiculous fight. Cedric's bangs had been pulled out a lot by the other party, and his hairline was already in a precarious situation. Kevin Lestrange's tender and soft face, which had turned red due to the magic transformation of the 11-year-old boy, had been pinched red by Cedric. And because the other party did not hold back at all, the red and swollen face looked like a baboon's. But at this moment, the two men were like gladiators in an octagonal cage, each using their own locking techniques to tightly restrain the other. The situation reached a stalemate. Both of them were grimacing in pain, but neither of them was willing to let go first. As a senior, you actually killed your own junior. Is this the bullshit kindness in your heart? Professor Snape, you must take care of him and clear all his house points. Kevin Lestrange, whose face was swollen from being pinched, looked at Professor Snape first and spoke. You're talking nonsense. It's obvious that you're targeting me everywhere and have ignored the dignity of a senior student many times. I must teach you a lesson, you shorty. This is my duty as a senior, and you were the first to do it. Cedric also looked at Professor Snape, and at the same time, increased the strength of his hands. Kevin Lestrange was pinched so hard that he kept gasping for breath. But of course he was not someone who was willing to suffer a loss. He also pulled out a few of Cedric's remaining bangs. Faced with two students rolling on the ground and fighting with each other, Professor Snape's eyes twitched wildly, and he looked like he was about to explode at any time. He said mercilessly, "Shut up, you two stupid trolls. You two are wizards first. I don't think anyone taught you to fight like this at Hogwarts. And secondly, Mr. Lestrange, you and Mr. Diggory belong to the same house. Deducting Mr. Diggory's house points is probably not a punishment for him, but a punishment for both of you. Hufflepuff House is honored to have you two." Faced with Professor Snape's sarcasm, Cedric and Kevin Lestrange didn't dare to say anything more. They could only vent their anger on each other, and they both increased the strength in their hands. On the other side, Karl looked at the scene in front of him and couldn't help laughing, thinking back to what he had done and seen today. Maybe it is really just some hardships. Once the obstacles in your heart disappear, the world will indeed be a different place. Just when he was about to sigh about life, a cold gaze instantly locked onto him. Professor Snape was on the verge of exploding, but his entire body did not show any sign of movement, and his head had turned around at some point. The strange posture and the dark face made Karl's heart skip a beat. As expected, Professor Snape started spraying venom directly. "Mr. Hohenzollern, I think your revenge drama is over now. Do you feel better now?" "I never thought that Hogwarts would allow a student to miss classes for 2 to 3 months. You are indeed a unique existence that I have never seen before, but your level of organization really worries me. Also, have you forgotten something? In the script you gave me, there is no audience for your revenge drama, and the spectacle of watching your foolish men fighting each other in the crudest manner. How could that be, Professor?" Seeing that Professor Snape was about to start losing his temper, Karl quickly took the initiative point with a smile on his face. He approached her actively, took out a thick document from his ring, and handed it over. This is about your share, as well as all the equity certificates of the related foundations that have been established. According to the current market value, the 5% stake given to you is worth more than $300 billion. Enough to help you complete that great plan. I even found a very suitable project leader for you in the federal prison. As he spoke, Karl handed Professor Snape another photo. It was a photo of a biology laboratory with several scientific researchers in white coats. An experiment was being done seriously in the laboratory, and on the huge display screen in the laboratory was a picture of a lady with beautiful emerald green eyes. Lily. Chapter 344. Professor SNAPEN-039's Christmas Gift and the Troublesome Cat and Dog. Professor Snape couldn't help but shout out a name. His eyes fixed on the photo point. Carol, on the other side, quickly put his finger to his mouth to make a mute gesture and then snatched the photo away. What do you want to do? Professor Snape looked at Cole with a ferocious face. Carol said solemnly while playing with the photo. Be quiet, Professor. Don't be so loud. You need to understand this clearly. Whether according to the laws of the British wizarding world or the laws of the United States, this photo is enough to get us killed without a burial place. Leaving such evidence in the world is something that no intelligent person should do. Hearing this, Professor Snape fell silent. He turned his head back, lowered his head and remained silent, because he knew that the other party was right. Soon after, the sound of burning flames was heard, and the unique sound of bubbles bursting when the photo was burning made his body tremble slightly. It was only a few seconds, but he felt as if centuries had passed. Until suddenly he felt someone patting his shoulder. Professor Snape turned around and instantly smelled a burnt smell coming towards him. A torn photo appeared before his eyes. The outline of the photo had been burned to ashes, leaving only a small part in the center of the photo. Beneath the gray dust, a pair of emerald green eyes still sparkled in the sunday. What do you mean? Professor Snape did not immediately take the incomplete photo from Karl's hand. Instead, he stared at the other person, while Carol smiled happily and forced the photo into his hand. He walked straight to the back, where the two little kids were still fighting each other, and passed by them. Professor Snape's voice rang in his ears. Merry Christmas, Professor. I hope you like this gift, Professor. Snape was stunned for a few seconds. Then he felt like there was something on the back of the photo. He turned it over and saw that it was a message with wet ink. No one likes a business that only invests but has no return. Bullshit. Professor Snape cursed directly. Your handwriting is so ugly, and you like to leave messages everywhere. Then he didn't forget to make a joke, which made Karl, who had just pretended to be cool and left, almost fall down on the spot. After finally standing firm, he immediately turned to look at Professor Snape with an angry face. His eyes were full of grievance and resentment. But it is obvious that as the first wizard in the magical world to come into contact with Karl, Professor Snape knows this guy better than anyone else. So he spoke directly. Don't look at me like that. I know you're pretending. Now is not the time for me to say thank you. Don't forget the promise you made to me. At the same time, I can also give you a slightly philosophical word. The magic world is in a very bad state right now. As the mines you planted gradually explode, someone is drawing strength from them. The best chance to put out a fire is when it has not yet started. After saying this, Professor Snape used apparition to leave the open space. What's the point? Facing the empty space, Karl muttered to himself, as if he was having a conversation across the air. No matter how fierce the fire is, it can be put out by dropping a heavy enough bomb next to it. The moment the explosion consumed all the air, the flames naturally died out. Who said I was going to put out the fire with water in the first place? After saying that, Karl turned around and walked towards Cedric and the other man. Coming to the two who were still rolling on the ground. He took a deep breath and then suddenly shouted, whoever continues to fight will have no cake to eat in the future. After a roar, two black shadows stood up from the ground in an instant, and Cedric covered his bald bangs. Kevin Lestrange, with tears in his eyes, rubbed his swollen Face point both guys pouted, with expressions of being wronged. Point Carol just looked at the two of them silently, sighed helplessly, and stretched out his two hands, one high and one low. Point he rubbed both heads vigorously, and spoke in an unusually gentle tone. The fight should be over by now. There's no winner in the mental battle, and it seems the physical battle hasn't been decided either. How about a halftime break? Faced with Karl's attempt to smooth things over, Cedric and Kevin Lestrange were angry, but still managed to accept it. Point. But it is still necessary to say harsh words to each other. Point. The first to speak was Kevin Lestrange. Even though his face was swollen, he still stared at Cedric fiercely. Stupid pumpkinhead, I will definitely prove that you are not worthy of standing with us. You are not worthy of being compared with me at all. You damn shorty, you should learn how to respect others. You are the one who has no qualifications. I was here first. In great undertakings, there is no such thing as first come first served. Everything is based on ability. You're talking nonsense. I was Karl's first chosen partner and first friend. You are the third person. What? Third party? Seeing that the two guys were cursing more and more fiercely, and the topic was getting more and more off topic, Karl quickly spoke up. To stop them. Point. He stared at the two of them fiercely, and scolded them loudly. Okay, stop arguing. Mr. Lestrange, you should learn to respect each other. Mr. Cedric may seem like he only knows how to eat on weekdays, but you have to admit that without the system he wrote, our plan would never have gone so smoothly. And you, Mr. Diggory, although Mr. Lestrange is a little slow in development, you can't hold on to his height issue, and you should learn from others' work attitude instead of. The criticism came to an abrupt end as Cole was knocked to the ground by his angry cat and dog. Who do you think only knows how to eat? What is developmental delay? Is this something a leader can say? Cedric and Kevin Lestrange pinned Karl down on the left and right. It was already getting dark. Point. The bright sunshine has slowly set at the foot of the mountain, replaced by the shining stars in winter. Karl, who was pinned to the ground, looked up with a smile on his face. The brilliant Milky Way was reflected in his azure eyes. Do you know which is the greatest star in the world? This sudden question made the two of them a little overwhelmed. Point. Cedric was the first to shake his head. Don't change the subject. There is no such thing as the greatest star. Kevin Lestrange analyzed calmly as always. Greatness has many meanings. When used in the universe and the starry sky, it may express its mass, volume, or brightness. Before there is a clear standard. Before one of the test takers had finished answering, Karl gave his answer in advance, and he struggled to break free from the two men. Point. He stretched out two fingers and pointed them at the two guys' foreheads. You two foolish subordinates, the greatest star is in you, your eyes, because no matter how bright the stars are, they can't illuminate the entire universe, but you just need to look up. All the stars will be reflected in your eyes. You two are unique, just like the stars in the sky. Each one shines with its own unique light. Chapter 345. Karl 039's Christmas gift. Don't say things that could be misunderstood, Mr. Hohenzollern. This is not something a leader should say. After Karl said these disgusting words, Cedric and Kevin Lestrange's faces turned visibly red. Point. The two of them quickly sat up from the ground and turned their backs to Carol. Point. Karl, who was pinned to the ground, was finally able to get up and looked at the backs of his cats and dogs with relief. Point. In fact, he felt a little embarrassed to say such corny words, and he didn't know how he could say them. Point. It seemed as if it came out of his mouth suddenly. Or perhaps it was driven by some emotion hidden in his heart, but it didn't matter now. Point. He did not disturb the two people who had their backs to him. He just sat on the ground with his back straight, slowly looked up at the starry sky, and enjoyed the peace that was more than 10 minutes late. Point. The three young men were standing in an open space in the mountains after the snow. There was not a single cloud in the sky, only countless bright stars twinkling. Point. The cold air also seemed to become gentler. To put it in a more literary way, it might be because of their ideals for the future. Point. But in reality, the three people were just unconsciously moving closer to each other because of the cold. Point. When the three bodies leaned against each other, their body temperature made the surrounding air much warmer. The surrounding is a world covered in silver. The snow covers the entire mountain range, reflecting the starlight, as if the earth is also participating in this starry feast. The mountains in the distance appear even steeper under the moonlight, while the trees nearby are covered with crystal clear icicles, like works of art carefully crafted by nature. Time seemed to stand still at this moment. The three young men merged into one with the starry sky and the snow, forming the purest picture in the world. Happy holidays, gentlemen. It's an honor to work with you. After an unknown amount of time, Karl slowly spoke, with his usual unfocused smile on his face. I hope you like my gift to you. You know, I spent $2,000 million on this magnificent view. It is indeed beautiful. Kevin Lestrange nodded silently. He pointed his finger to the sky, his eyes revealing an unprecedented calmness ever since he followed Karl to the United States. His eyes have always been filled with fatigue and helplessness, and at this moment, just as Karl said, the brilliant Milky Way was reflected in his eyes. The vastness of the universe was covered by the small eye sockets, and the long-lost tranquility made him more and more fascinated. But he quickly returned to reality and turned his head slightly to look at the manor. But next to such a beautiful scene, there is a manor full of decay and sin, which does ruin the atmosphere. How about this, Mr. Hohenzollern? I'll give you a holiday gift as well. How about we work together to wipe this building off this world? That's great. Cole laughed happily and was about to get up from the ground, but was held down by a small fat hand. Kevin Lestrange looked down at him and said seriously, "You don't need to help with this. Since it's our gift, of course we have to complete it." He said it very seriously, but in Karl's eyes it was very funny, because he was looking at a child who was only 11 years old. The person standing there was only half a head taller than me, who was sitting on the ground. He looked down at me and said these words with a serious tone and expression. Besides, his voice hasn't changed yet, so no matter how he performs, it still exudes a sense of childishness. But Cole was very obedient. He sat on the ground motionless, watching Kevin Lestrange kick Cedric, who was sleeping on his shoulder, and wake him up. Who kicked me? Cedric, who was kicked awake, was still a little confused. After seeing Kevin Lestrange's face clearly, he instantly became furious, but Kevin Lestrange grabbed him and pulled him towards the two large oil drums. Then he patted one of the oil drums with his hand. "You carry this with magic or yourself. We are going to fill every corner of that manor with the gasoline in here." Why? Looking at the huge oil drum, Cedric immediately became unhappy. "It's okay if you don't want to." Kevin Lestrange looked indifferent. He took out his wand and began to try to use the levitation spell to control one of the oil barrels while speaking casually. "Mr. Hohenzollern just said that the open space and the beautiful starry sky above are his Christmas gifts to the two of us. Although this gift is a little cheaper, I'm still very satisfied with it. I also know that some people only know how to sleep on other people's shoulders. I never look up at the sky, but since we have received gifts from others, shouldn't we also prepare gifts in return?" As he spoke, Kevin Lestrange easily used magic to make the huge oil barrel float in the air above his head. "It's not that I can't do this job by myself. I just want to finish things here as soon as possible. That's why I'm giving you half of it. You can of course choose to refuse, as long as you prepare a better gift." After saying that, Kevin Lestrange turned around and left, and the oil barrel above his head also floated away. Looking at his back, Cedric was so angry that his teeth were itching, and he cursed him 100 times in his heart. He had no choice but to take out his wand and imitate the other party in using the levitation spell to control the remaining oil barrel. Following behind the other person, he walked towards the manor. About 20 minutes later, Cedric, reeking of gasoline, followed Kevin Lestrange with his head down. Returning to the open space they had been in before, Karl couldn't help laughing as soon as he saw the two of them. "You to look a little too embarrassed. You're still laughing." Kevin Lestrange suddenly became a little angry, and he squinted his eyes at Cedric behind him. "You can't even do such a simple thing. We are wizards. We can use magic to control those two oil barrels, but you insisted on doing it yourself. The stains on clothes can be removed with magic, but what about the smell on your body? That's really stupid." After scolding Cedric, he turned his anger towards Karl. "I Don't know where you found this idiot. Maybe. We are fools too. Facing Kevin Lestrange's questioning, Karl smiled generously. He reached out and touched the other person's face and head, then wiped the stains on his own body casually. Well, don't blame Mr. DeGory anymore. I'm also a stupid idiot who smells of gasoline now. Looking at Cole with a silly smile on his face, Kevin Lestrange could only sigh helplessly. He reached out and held down Karl's right hand as he was about to take out the wand. Then he took out a Zippo lighter and a pack of Marlboro cigarettes from his trouser pocket. He handed it to the other person and smiled helplessly. Use this. It's a little more ceremonial. Chapter 346, The Fire and the Final Question 1. That's very thoughtful, Mr. Lestrange. Karl took the lighter and cigarette handed over by the other party with his right hand. You're welcome. I'm a professional. Kevin Lestrange pouted proudly. I'm a professional. Cedric on the side curled his lips with disdain and said something in a low voice. Cole was helpless in the face of this pair of bickering lovers. He ignored them and directly opened the red and white cigarette package. He took out a cigarette and put it in his mouth, then casually turned on the lighter and lit it. Just take a deep breath and feel the nicotine-rich smoke flowing through your lungs, putting you at risk of cancer and wasting your life. Memories of the past 10 years, the screams I heard during those years, and the girl whose face I almost forgot. They all came out of his mouth with a puff of white smoke and disappeared into the starry night sky. Oak Nana, Hatter. Karl used magic to throw the cigarette, but towards the manor. From dozens of meters away, the cigarette butt went straight to the target like a bullet. In an instant, flames shot up into the sky, and the raging flames engulfed the entire manor. The fire spread quickly, and the wood made crackling sounds under the high temperature, as if telling the story of the building's past. Black smoke billowed straight into the sky, illuminating half the sky red. As the legend goes, Jehovah rained down sulfur and fire from the sky and completely destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. The red flames were like the endless fire of hell, burning away all the sins and human desires. The surrounding air was distorted by the heat wave. Even though there was snow covering the trees and grass in the distance, they were affected and turned black. Karl, standing on the hillside behind, watched all this quietly. There was no sadness or joy in his eyes, only an indescribable complex emotion. After an unknown amount of time, a biting cold wind blew in from the valley, finally taking away the scorching air. As the flames gradually died down, the originally towering building had turned into a pile of ruins. A perfect closing performance. Karl turned around and called the other two to leave. Kevin Lestrange said nothing and followed him directly. Cedric looked at the rubble nervously and spoke in a warning tone. Should we go check it out? If there are still fires in such a dry environment, it may cause a large-scale fire. Hearing this, Carol turned to look at him and pointed a finger at the sky. Let's leave quickly. I think the New York Fire Police and other departments should have discovered the fire. They will be here soon. There is no need for you to worry. They will restore everything here to its original state. We will get a very generous insurance payout, Mr. Epstein, and he will be sent to where he belongs. It's not just a show, it's also a signal of something special. Hearing this, Cedric reacted immediately. You arranged all this, didn't you? Carol, you kept me in the dark again. I'm not targeting you alone. Karl showed his signature smirk and pointed his right finger at Kevin Lestrange beside him. The reason you feel like you're the only one being cheated is because you're a little clumsy. I think Mr. Lestrange should have guessed it long ago. Of course. Kevin Lestrange smiled triumphantly, looking at Cedric, whose face was dark. I'm not some dumb pumpkin that can't think. After that, he followed Carol and left the scene. Watching the two people disappearing from his back, Cedric's face was puffed up with anger. He took a deep breath and shouted loudly, "You two teamed up to bully me again. I hate you." The sound waves vibrated and flocks of birds flew in the mountains in the dark night. December 12th. Christmas, London, England. Interior of the Bardashe Schwarz Wonder. After saying a brief goodbye to Cedric and Kevin Lestrange at the airport, Karl rushed straight to the bar in front of him. This is a typical German pub with wooden decorations, retro furniture, and German beer mugs, and sausage patterns hanging on the walls. The air seemed to be filled with the aroma of roasted pork knuckle and sauerkraut. Since today was Christmas, there were not many customers in the bar. Karl, who was sitting by the window, could only look out the window. Outside the window was the downtown street of London. The people coming and going seemed particularly busy under the lights. "How was your vacation, my child?" A playful greeting drew Karl's gaze from the window back to the inside of the bar, and Grindelwald walked over to him with a tray point with a disrespectful smile on his face. He placed the plate in front of him and sat down opposite him. The dishes on the plate are quite rich and are also iconic German, with 3 kinds of grilled sausages of different shapes and lengths, a handful of mashed potatoes with sauerkraut, and a huge crispy roast pork knuckle. Karl didn't hesitate or be polite for a moment. He picked up the knife and fork beside him and started showing off without even laying out the napkin. The advantage of poorly grilled sausages is that the rich fat combined with the aroma of cheese and black pepper explodes directly in your mouth. The mashed potatoes were slightly inferior, probably because only salt was added during the cooking process, but they were served with sauerkraut. It can maximize the original flavor of the 2 ingredients. And the crispy roasted pork elbow is a must. The crispy puff pastry makes a sinful crisp sound when you chew it, which is a complete challenge to healthy eating. Don't be so cold to the child. Grindelwald looked at Karl, who was concentrating on eating, and pretended to be a little sad. "I thought you would have countless stories to share with your dad after your trip to America, but now it seems that it's all in your heart. My status is not as good as that roast pork elbow, and maybe even not as good as that plate of pickled vegetables." Grindelwald was so moved that he even squeezed out 2 tears from the corners of his eyes. "That's enough." Karl slammed the dinner knife on the table, raised his head, and glared at the handsome old man in front of him. "You know, when I was in the United States, I spent at least half of my time balancing the relationship between my 2 subordinates. They were even rolling around on the ground fighting each other in the middle of one of my biggest moments, all because of you. It was caused by forcing that guy into my team, but that's also a kind of happy distress, isn't it?" Grindelwald didn't buy it at all and looked at Karl with a sly smile on his face. "From what I know, Mr. Lestrange is your right-hand man. He even took away the financial power of your company. You should be thanking me for being such a capable person. Never mind. I don't really care about this." As he spoke, Grindelwald leaned down slightly, put his head close to Karl's ear, and asked in a serious tone, "By contrast, I would like to know whether my dear child has made his final choice. Which one do you like? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 347 GRINDELWALD and -039 S routine. What nonsense are you talking about? Karl's face turned red, and he looked at Grindelwald in disbelief. "I can't believe you said such words. They are far from what I expected from you at the beginning. I thought that if I could really meet you one day, I would have a powerful ally who could provide unlimited help for my future plans. But I didn't expect that what I got was just a pervert who likes to pay attention to other people's private lives." "Pervert?" Grindelwald also seemed a little angry. He looked directly into Karl's eyes and said without flinching, "You can't use these words to describe me, your biological father. I'm just fulfilling my responsibilities as a father." "Father's responsibility?" Karl looked disdainful. "I didn't even know you existed until I was 10 years old, when I was imprisoned in that dark hell. Where is my father? I don't even know how I was born. Who are you to talk about father's responsibility? If Aunt Wenderosia hadn't found me, I might still be wandering the streets of New York. There wasn't even a legal identity, and of course there may not be one now." Hearing this, Grindelwald's eyes looked a little lonely. He slowly leaned back in the chair, lowered his eyes and said helplessly, "I'm sorry kid, the situation was too chaotic. Even the Muggle world was thrown into chaos by the war. When I learned that you were born as nothing more than a soulless shell, I lost all hope. It is even more impossible to expect that one day that body will truly give birth to a soul. I have always believed that magic was a huge mistake. We never gave up looking for you, but we never thought that you were imprisoned in a place like that. I'm really sorry for you." When he spoke, Grindelwald's tone was extremely dejected, and that sense of helplessness and sadness magnified his old age. Karl suddenly realized that the person in front of him was no longer the high-spirited demon king who made the entire European magic world tremble. He was just an old centenarian. Looking at the other's face, which was no longer young and full of sadness, Karl inevitably felt a little sad. He took a deep breath and looked at the other party and said, "Okay, all the past has turned to ashes with that fire. There is no need for us to discuss it anymore. The most perfect regret is not as good as a flawed action. As long as you stop asking such stupid questions, I can still forgive you." That won't work. Karl had just said he wanted to forgive the other party when Grindelwald suddenly raised his head and looked at him with that disrespectful smile. He stretched out a finger and kept waving it while speaking. "I can agree to all your previous requests and even give you a lot of compensation, but I can't agree to that one." "What?" Karl's cheek twitched as he looked at the old man in front of him, who changed his attitude faster than turning the pages of a book. "What's wrong with you? You want me to forgive you with this attitude?" Facing Karl's questioning, Grindelwald seemed justified. He took out a bunch of keys from his pocket and placed them in front of Karl. The keys have various shapes, including gorgeous keys made of pure gold, bronze keys covered with rust, and even some electronic keys that look very advanced at first glance. There were so many of them that it was estimated that there were at least 10 of them. They were strung together by a metal king and placed on the dining table between the two of them. Grindelwald pointed at the keys and said with a smile, "I will never shirk my responsibilities. This is part of my compensation to you. As for the request you just made, please forgive me for not being able to agree to this, because that is my last right as a father and I must keep it." Looking at those colorful keys, Karl's cheeks twitched wildly, and he said with disdain, "If I'm not mistaken, these are just some keys to the vault. Do you think I'm still short of money now? And the plan I'm going to implement next can't be accomplished with money alone. I need a strong ally. Instead of a pile of cold money, it's the gold coins lying in the vault and the cold numbers in the bank account, which are meaningless to me now. And I want to ask, what is the final right of a father? Would a good father be a pervert who wants to know about his child's private life all day long? Don't be so harsh, kid, and don't use that adjective." Grindelwald restrained his smile and sighed as he looked at Karl. His face was full of helplessness, which made Karl beside him a little scared, and he started to question, "Is there something wrong with me? You keep shaking your head and sighing. I'm really uncomfortable with you, not a child." Grindelwald shook his head helplessly. "You don't have any problem. Or rather, your only problem is that you are too good." "What bullshit is this?" Cole was confused by this sentence. Grindelwald had taken a glass of beer in his hand at some point and explained while drinking it, "I wasn't wrong, kid. Your biggest problem is being too good. Let's just list them briefly. The help a father can provide to his child, the care and support he needs to grow up when he is young, is something I can no longer do. I don't need to help him learn during his student career. There is probably no one more talented than you in Hogwarts. Any magic is easy for you, then it would be a good idea to extend this to provide guidance and help for his career when he grows up. You are now the richest person in the British wizarding world. Your name will definitely be on the Forbes rich list in the United States next year. So, what can I do?" "Nothing." As he spoke, Grindelwald poured a full glass of beer into his stomach, like a middle-aged man who had just been called a waste by his boss in the company. His whole body exuded a decadent atmosphere, and he looked at Karl helplessly, then sighed again, slowly stretched out 2 fingers, and continued, "Then, in addition to the above, the only 2 things I can do are to provide you with some life advice when you feel confused in your life, but This one is no longer possible. I have never seen you confused. You are more goal-oriented than I was back then. You can keep moving forward according to your own inner thoughts. Take revenge when it's time to take revenge, and do whatever you want. In contrast, rather than giving you life advice, it's more likely that you'll give me an alty life advice. So, Grindelwald slammed his empty beer glass on the table and stared at Karl. As a father now, there is only one thing I can do, and that is to help my child when he is lost in adolescence, provide him with valuable advice to prevent him from missing out on the true love in his heart due to worldly prejudices, and before the other party is actually married, you should always be on guard. So, which one do you like? Is it our gentle and lovely Mr. Diggory, or the cold and professional Mr. Lestrange? Chapter 348, Carol, the angry one, and the disrespectful old guys. Karl's face was full of question marks. He suddenly felt that his brain was not enough. I felt like I had just finished listening to a sociological argumentation class at Stanford University on human father-son relationships. The other party used the most scientific method and the most rigorous approach to prove the human father-son relationship, and the whole logic sounded impeccable. But as he was talking, the professor on the stage suddenly looked at him and asked him which of his subordinates he liked. This sudden feeling of confusion caught Karl off guard. After being stunned for 5 seconds, he finally reacted, looked at Grindelwald who was smiling in front of him, and said with gritted teeth, "Mr. Grindelwald is so great. I never thought that one day I would be bewitched by other people's performances. You are worthy of being recognized as the most dangerous dark wizard by the Magical Congress of the United States and many European ministries of magic. With this set of performance and speech system, if someone lets down their guard a little, they are likely to blurt out the answer you want in the end. No need to be so polite, kid." Grindelwald smiled and stroked the beer glass next to him. The empty beer glass looked as if the reverse button had been pressed. The amber liquid filled the entire glass from the bottom again, and there were even dense white bubbles. Grindelwald took a sip of the beer in his glass and looked at Cole with a smile on his face. Looking at that smile, Carol really wanted to punch the old guy hard. At the same time, he felt a little unconvinced in his heart, so he also imitated the other party and said with a smile, "Your method is indeed very sophisticated, but unfortunately it is still a little bit lacking, and you didn't get the answer you wanted." "Oh, is that so?" Grindelwald's smile became a little weird. He looked at the young man in front of him and spoke calmly. "Sometimes, not wanting to answer is also an answer. You didn't refuse directly, nor did you discover my tricks halfway through. That only proves that you were attracted by my words, and that you were thinking hard while I was trying to trick you. It's just that you hesitated at the last moment. Hesitation is the answer. Here is my first sentence about love, my child. In a relationship, hesitation means reluctance, which means you still care about and have thoughts about the other person. You're talking nonsense." Karl denied it immediately without any manners, and stared at Grindelwald angrily. Grindelwald seemed relaxed and at ease, with a more intense smile on his face. He pointed his finger at Karl. "You being so angry and frustrated now only proves my point. It's okay. I'm willing to wait. You can take your time to choose. It's not a big problem to have both." Cole was so angry that he was about to go crazy. If it weren't for his current strength, he might not be able to defeat the old man in front of him. He could guarantee that he wanted to give the other party an Avada Kedavra right now. He was so angry that he turned around and left after hesitating for a few seconds. It was a serious mistake to leave this bar and come here to build this old thing. Unfortunately, as soon as he walked out of the dining table, Grindelwald grabbed him from behind. Carol turned his head and stared at the handsome old man in front of him and said with a bad look, "Let me go. I don't want to listen to your nonsense here anymore." Grindelwald put aside his previous attitude, pretended to be pitiful, and spoke in a pleading tone. "Okay, don't be angry. It's just a joke between father and son. Why do you have to take it so seriously? I do have something serious to discuss with you. It's about your future plans, and this time I didn't take the initiative to contact you. Al forced me to come. Dumbledore, what's the matter with that old bee? Hearing that Dumbledore asked him to come to him, Karl couldn't help but feel curious after the other party repeatedly assured him not to ask such embarrassing questions again. He slowly sat back in his seat, staring at the handsome old man with a grin in front of him. He spoke directly. What on earth does that old bee want from me? I remember that we had obtained Professor McGonagall's consent before leaving Hogwarts. Besides, if I'm not at Hogwarts, shouldn't he be living a more comfortable life? Not to mention he has your company. After saying that, Karl narrowed his eyes and looked at Grindelwald with an I know all look. This made Grindelwald extremely embarrassed, and a blush appeared on his pale old face. Don't make fun of your parents. Is it okay to talk about such topics casually? I'm just a professor at Hogwarts. There are many aspects of magical history that I don't know much about, so I go to the principal's office to ask for advice more often. How often? 4 or 5 times a week. Grindelwald stroked his chin with his hand, looking somewhat embarrassed. Carol's face was full of disdain. He stared at the handsome old man in front of him and said in a sarcastic tone, "There are only 7 days in a week, excluding 2 days when Professor McGonagall needs to communicate with the headmaster about the school's situation. For the rest of the time, I'm afraid you'll be the only professor in the principal's office. You two are really compensating yourselves in a vindictive way. I'm not afraid of hurting my old body." "What are you talking about?" Grindelwald retorted angrily. "What kind of words are these? Such lewd words. You are forbidden to have such dirty thoughts. We are discussing the safety of the British wizarding community. It is a very important topic and very serious. It is definitely not as disgusting and obscene as you say." "Did I say anything disgusting and obscene?" Karl's expression was still disdainful. He finally caught a chance to take revenge on the old man in front of him. So he spoke bluntly. "Only people with disgusting and vulgar hearts would automatically imagine what I just said as disgusting and vulgar scenes. You two old and disrespectful fellows. I have only one request, and that is, before I graduate from Hogwarts, I don't want to hear that the principal is retiring early due to health problems. I have no intention of giving up the position of principal. Alright, kid." Grindelwald waved his hands and raised them slightly. "I surrender. I was wrong just now and shouldn't have tricked you like that. Let's not discuss this topic any further, or I really won't be able to explain to Al that I haven't been to his office for 3 weeks. Just listen to me carefully. After all, these things are most directly related to you." Seeing that the old guy had given in, Karl didn't plan to delve deeper into the matter. At the same time, he also needed the other party to talk to him. After all, the news about the British wizarding world and Hogwarts is based on intelligence. Perhaps in the entire magical world, there is no one better than the old man in front of us. So he nodded and said, "Well, if you say so, let's send this matter here. What does Dumbledore want to talk to me about? And have anything interesting happened in Hogwarts and the British wizarding world?" Chapter 349 Karl 039's finance class starts 1. "It's interesting how you make these things sound so simple." Grindelwald smiled bitterly and looked at Karl helplessly. "The economy of the British wizarding world is in a mess right now. There are almost no wizards in the market who can immediately take out 10 gold galleons, whether it's a robe shop, a wand shop, or a shop selling raw materials for potions. There are almost no customers coming in now. More wizards are willing to exchange their gold galleons for pounds to buy daily necessities in the muggle world." Hearing this, Karl just looked at Grindelwald coldly, stretched out his hand expressionlessly, and motioned for him to continue. Grindelwald didn't say anything more and continued speaking. "Things aren't going well inside Hogwarts either. Ever since you left, that red-haired brat called Ron Weasley, he just started jumping up and down for no apparent reason. He even spoke nonsense in the auditorium during lunch several times. It is claimed that the current chaos in the British Ministry of Magic and the crisis currently facing the British wizarding world are all caused by you. You are responsible for all this." His speech was very clever, packaging you as a greedy vampire and vaguely calling you a traitor to wizards and a running dog of muggles. "What are the specific results?" Karl smiled disdainfully. I don't need these empty descriptions. I need some professional analysis. And express the specific situation. Tell me directly how many of my dear classmates believed these nonsense. Nonsense? Grindelwald raised his eyebrows and looked at his child with a smile on his face. Except for the last 2 points, what the red-haired kid said is basically true. Besides, he did take advantage of some objective conditions at the moment. I have to say his method is quite clever. He has transferred all the objective contradictions of reality onto you. So, apart from your Hufflepuff house and some people from Slytherin house, Gryffindor and Ravenclaw houses basically believed this. The environment you were in when you returned to school must not have been very good. At the same time, I'm somewhat curious about how you created a crisis out of thin air. There is never a crisis created out of thin air, Karl said with a serious expression, and snapped his fingers with the sound of snapping fingers. The coffee machine at the bar counter behind him started working point first. The grinder starts automatically and grinds the selected coffee beans into a fine powder next. The clean water in the water tank is heated to a suitable temperature and then flows into the brewing chamber through the water pipe point under the impact of water flow. The coffee powder and hot water are fully mixed, releasing a rich aroma point at the same time. The cup was moving slowly in the air, as if being pulled by an invisible force point. It floated out of the cupboard, through the air, and landed steadily under the water spout of the coffee machine point. When the coffee machine completes the brewing process, a cup of steaming, fragrant coffee flows through the pipe into the cup. Suspended in the air, the disembodied waiter brought the cup of coffee to Karl again. It was even thoughtfully provided with a silver spoon. Karl picked up the spoon and gently stirred the coffee point. The tone was as smooth as the grease floating on it. There is no crisis in this world that appears out of thin air, just like the magic I just used, even though I can control my magic power accurately. But it only replaces some of the energy. The entire coffee making process still requires every step. It wouldn't be a perfect drink if it wasn't like that. You sound more like a muggle scientist when you say that. Grindelwald stared at Karl, who was tasting his coffee. But I still don't understand why it only takes you less than a year, given that the British Wizarding World's monetary system has been in operation for hundreds of years. Can the situation become so dangerous just because of that bank? Of course not. Karl frowned and gently put down the coffee cup in his hand. He didn't expect that this German coffee would be so bitter. It was even more miserable than the life of some cattle and horses. Then he used magic in the same way to get 2 bottles of water. After rinsing his mouth, he spoke directly. A bank can't change anything, just like the development of the Muggle world over thousands of years. Although some things may sound weird, this is the nature of the world. Let me give you a very simple example. A man took out a loan worth 1,000 gold galleons at the first savings bank of the Wizarding World. There is an extra bill in the bank account with an annual interest rate of 8%, but it is to quickly recover the funds. The bank won't wait 12 months for the other party to pay off all the loans, so we can package it. This bill with an annual interest rate of 8% was packaged into a financial product with an annual interest rate of 5% and repayment of principal and interest after 1 year. Then, we sell this financial product on the market. At the beginning, it won't cause much commotion, as if nothing has happened. Karl conducted his own live demonstration on the table between the two of them, using a few dinner plates and coffee cups. But what happens after that? The wizards who initially received the loan basically use the money for consumption or for investment, such as opening a small shop. Then, this money will slowly flow into the market and start to circulate in the market, thereby boosting the market's prosperity. Goods are selling better, people's wages are rising, and everything seems to be thriving. But there are always some things that cannot keep up with the growth in a short period of time. You mean those shops? Hearing this, Grindelwald seemed to be thinking about something. Karl smiled, looked at the handsome old man in front of him and nodded. It seems that you are much smarter than the average person. In fact, there are not only shops, but also many rare items. For example, rare potion raw materials, ancient magic books, etc. But these are actually not important. What is important is never the product itself. It's the market's confidence in them. As transactions proceed, the value of these items will increase exponentially. A wizard who holds these items at the beginning can obtain huge wealth that he never thought of in this link. It will also arouse the greed of other wizards. What will they do? Reason tells them that this is just a temporary prosperity, but greed will drive them to join this crazy game, relying on their own wealth, and they are not worthy of joining the game, so they will think back to the previous loan and the financial markets that have been waiting for a long time and can raise funds quickly. Chapter 350 Karl 039's finance class starts too. Karl turned into a straw out of thin air, inserted it into the coffee he had just brewed, and kept blowing air into it to make bubbles in less than a moment. A huge bubble appeared on the coffee cup. The surface of a huge bubble reflected the faces of two people, one old and one young. Karl looked at the bubble with a disdainful smile on his face. With the emergence of the first batch of wizards who suddenly became rich, more and more wizards began to participate in this game. They started to frantically look for banks to borrow money. As the number of people applying for loans increased, the qualifications and interest rates required by the banks also became higher and higher. Logically speaking, such a high interest rate should discourage many wizards, but on the other hand, the prices of shops and other rare items are rising rapidly. It was much higher than the rate at which bank interest rates were rising. Wizards began to leverage frantically, borrowing gold galleons from banks at increasingly higher interest rates, and then you throw in some commodity price speculation, and at the same time the banks add so much debt all at once. It is impossible to just sit and wait for these debts to be slowly repaid, so financial products with annual yields of 8%, 10%, 12%, and higher yields have appeared in the market. The emergence of these products will attract those wizards who do not have much money and are not very courageous to buy these financial products, and it happened to be at this time that the last batch of wizards who bought short-term financial products for 6 months began to reap the benefits and recover their principal. Their presence will boost the sales of subsequent financial products. At the same time, where do you think they will put the money after they gain it to buy new financial products? Grindelwald replied calmly, but at this moment his expression was no longer as relaxed as before. He looked at the high-spirited young man in front of him, but his expression became particularly solemn. Although he had learned something about Muggle economics before. However, the knowledge in cases in books are not as vivid as what you see with your own eyes and personal experience. On the other side, Cole was still blowing air into his coffee, and soon the already huge bubble became even bigger, as if it would burst at any time. You are right. The money will return to the market, along with the money loaned out from the bank. They all move to this market together, and over time, the value of those fixed commodities becomes incredibly high. In the end, ordinary people simply cannot afford it, and become collateral with no market, while those who profited at the beginning have become extremely wealthy. At this time, they also need to find new growth points. What should they do at this time? Karl patiently persuaded them, and although his tone was calm, he sounded like a devil bewitching people. This made Grindelwald on the side shudder. He looked at Karl's handsome face with a smile on his face, and couldn't help swallowing. I just want to speak, but I don't know how to start. Karl, who was waiting on the side, saw that he had not spoken for a long time, so he answered for him directly. It seems that you are not as decisive on the battlefield of money as you are in other aspects. You can even say that you are a little merciful. Of course, they would use these unmarketable collaterals to obtain a second mortgage loan from the bank. The huge amount of funds obtained will be invested in the debt market, which has just started to pick up, and continue to push up the price of the debt market. Let the debt markets go into a frenzy and eventually explode together. As he spoke, Karl pulled out the straw and gently poked the huge bubble with the pointed tip. The huge coffee bubbles collapsed instantly, leaving only some crystal clear water vapor floating in the air. Looking at the water vapor in front of him, Grindelwald said thoughtfully, "So, the current situation of the British wizarding world stems from this principle?" "Of course not." Karl hastily denied it, and then smiled disdainfully. "This is just the beginning. This is far from reaching the point where the bubble bursts. There is just a little deflation in the British wizarding world right now. In The final analysis, it's just because the vast majority of society's wealth is now floating in the bond market, and there is too little money circulating in the market. This is just a prelude to the crisis. Everyone still has money, but it has not been invested in consumption and production. The real crisis will only come when the final harvester swings his sickle and harvests all the property of everyone. As he spoke, Karl pointed to his face and gave a kind and warm smile. I have no plans to do so. Now is not the right time. Really? Grindelwald was full of disbelief. He narrowed his eyes and stared at Karl. You'd be so kind as to give these fools the time of day? Of course not. Karl couldn't help laughing. He turned his head away from Grindelwald and laughed to himself. Of course I'm not that kind. What you said makes me feel a little embarrassed. It makes me seem like I'm a good person. As he spoke, Karl took a deep breath, tried to calm himself down, and turned to look at Grindelwald again. Seeing the murderous expression on the old man's face, he quickly waved his hand and said, "Don't get so excited. You've tricked me so many times before, and made me look so stupid. I only tricked you once. Why do you have to show such a scary expression? I'll tell you the reason. Hurry up and tell me." Grindelwald's expression became extremely dark, and Karl just showed a mocking smile that he had been holding back for a long time. It was something he had never experienced in his life, and it made him feel like his intelligence was insulted. Karl on the other side did not dare to be too presumptuous at this moment and spoke quickly. In fact, it is normal for you to have such thoughts at the beginning. Many people like to think of themselves as human emotions. Applying this to the capital market, it is actually quite unnecessary. Or the hunters did not kill immediately because the prey had already fallen into the trap. The only possibility is that he thinks the prey is too small to fit into his carefully constructed trap. I'm the same. I am a very greedy person. How can I be satisfied with just eating these small fish and shrimps? The reason why I haven't done anything yet is because the real big fish hasn't been hooked yet, and the British Ministry of Magic has not yet come to its conclusion. They have a considerable amount of assets stored in Gringotts Bank and their own underground magic vault. I want to eat them all at once. Hearing this, Grindelwald was stunned for a few seconds, but he quickly reacted and looked at Karl hesitantly. How can you be sure that those pigs in the British Ministry of Magic will be fooled? Why would they listen to you? Are you going to rob them again? Chapter 351. Why the economic crisis cannot be resolved. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? Karl's face changed immediately, and he looked at Grindelwald with an extremely serious expression. Please be careful with your words, sir. I have never done anything illegal in the British wizarding world. Everything I did was in compliance with regulations and laws. It was the damned Peter Pettigrew who committed the robbery at Gringotts Bank. I have nothing to do with Karl Hohenzollern. Please don't compare me with that ugly guy. Your words really make people sad. Grindelwald felt a little embarrassed after hearing this. He thought he was quite thick-skinned. But compared with the kid in front of me, I even seem a little immature. He had no choice but to calm down and speak in the calmest tone possible. Okay, let's just treat what I just said as drunken talk and get back to the issue itself. How do you plan to make the British Ministry of Magic willingly hand over their assets to you? From what I understand, Mr. Cornelius Fudge has been badly cheated by you, especially the pension plan you tailored for them. They lost all the money they had embezzled through hard work. Many of them have a hard time recovering their principal. At least try to live to over 400 years old. What you said is still not rigorous enough. Karl's expression was still serious. He sat up straight, like a professional agent meeting with a client. He stretched out a finger and said calmly, "You make it sound like I'm not a good person. The service I provide to customers is the most professional. Although the returns of their fund service plan are very slow, it is very stable and has very low risks. Believe it or not, within 2 months at most, they will thank me with tears in their eyes for saving their property in this way. I believe it. I believe everything you say now." Grindelwald was a little impatient and urged, "You haven't told me exactly what you plan to do, and it's getting late. Stop torturing an elderly man. My dear child, look, you're anxious again. Karl frowned slightly, and his expression became more serious. It's an honor to be able to learn such important knowledge for free. How can you be so impatient? Stop talking nonsense. Grindelwald completely exploded and roared in dissatisfaction. You're Mr. Diggory, who sleeps next to you every day, has never learned your knowledge. Why are you deliberately beating around the bush with me? Children should learn to be tolerant, at least not be so vindictive. It was my fault that I tricked you before. I sincerely apologize to you. Okay, I didn't ask you to apologize. Karl finally smiled again. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the anxious old man in front of him. Said slowly, it's actually very simple and doesn't require any clever planning. You just need to tell them a story. What story? Grindelwald frowned slightly. Hearing this, Karl used magic to fetch 3 empty cups from the bar and filled each of them with 3 cups of black coffee. Then he pointed at the 3 cups in front of him and said, the current situation in the British wizarding world is just like the 3 cups in front of me. You can simply understand these 3 cups as there are 3 types of representatives from the British wizarding world: the largest number of ordinary wizards, a small number of shop owners in Diagon Alley, and the bank I founded. The current situation for these 3 parties is that there is only black coffee in their cups, and this coffee represents their debts. These are intertwined. A Roseby, BOC, and COZA. There is no liquid cash in the entire market, and these debts are entangled and cannot be untied. At this time, if there is a department, it just needs to inject some funds. As he spoke, Karl took another empty cup, poured one of the cups of coffee into it, and then did the same with the other 2 cups of coffee. Pour the coffee back into the newly empty cups, and after a dazzling trick, the 3 cups of coffee will circulate continuously in the 4 cups. Then Karl used magic to maintain the trick of the 4 cups, pointing with his finger and speaking. In this way, the market will circulate again. Although the total amount of debt has not disappeared, the market will begin to circulate, and value will be generated again. It means that the capacity of the cup starts to get bigger and bigger, and the pressure of debt starts to gradually decrease. It's a very simple story. It suddenly occurred to me that some wizards' reluctance to integrate into the Muggle world might not just be because they feel they have magic, so they are more noble than Muggles, and it's more likely that they are afraid of getting along with Muggles. I was afraid they would sell me out, so I helped them count their money. Grindelwald stared intently at the 4 cups that were constantly pouring coffee back and forth under the power of magic. I couldn't help but shake my head and said, it seems that the books I have read before are far from enough. Adam Smith and Keynes, go to hell with them. Don't be so rude. Karl reminded with a smile, the economic theory they created is still very valuable. It's a pity that they are economists, so they will never understand economics. Grindelwald was stunned for a second, then asked thoughtfully, what do you mean by that? Isn't that how the problem is solved? At least for now, the problem is not that serious. You said it yourself. Now is not the time for a crisis. If the Ministry of Magic can come up with a considerable cash flow, we should be able to get through the current economic difficulties smoothly. Yes and no. Karl nodded slightly, then suddenly shook his head slowly, with a helpless expression on his face. He stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers gently, and the coffee pot behind the bar flew into his hand. He shook the coffee pot gently, listening to the sound of the remaining liquid inside, and spoke vaguely. That's true in theory, but economic crises in this world never follow scientific theories. The root of it today, tomorrow and forever will be the greed in the human heart. What do you mean by that? Grindelwald's expression turned serious. Karl smiled silently, slowly raised the coffee pot in his hand, and poured more coffee into the 4 cups. He said calmly as he poured it out, the reason is very simple. My previous theory must be based on a condition that it's the 3 parties that received the funds from the Ministry of Magic should use them where they should be used. Ordinary wizards can use this money to improve their living conditions. Small shop owners use this money to settle bank debts and reduce their own debt levels. And our banks should keep this money as a benchmark fund to redeem the high interest bonds on hand and prevent future debt defaults. But what if they don't? You No, in that financial market, there are countless financial products that exude an extremely tempting light. Karl showed a mysterious smile on his face and used magic to maintain 4 coffee cups as he continued to pour the coffee. He gradually lost his balance and some coffee began to spill onto the table. Not long after, 4 coffee cups fell to the ground, and after a crisp sound, only fragments were left on the ground. Chapter 352. Karl, the ultimate filial son. Grindelwald looked at the debris all over the ground and suddenly felt a chill. Karl, who was sitting opposite him, just silently took out a white napkin and wiped the coffee stain in front of him. He said calmly while wiping, "The entire magical world is just like Germany before its unification, with only a small population. It has been broken down into so many tiny parts. It's frustrating to watch. If you want to truly achieve wizard freedom, then they must unite under one flag, one ideal and one will. Political unification is difficult. After all, these wizards are used to living alone and freely. Then we will start with the economy, smash their original mess, and then liberate them from poverty and suffering again. In order to protect Germany's customs union, Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Germany, fought 3 dynastic wars, and I have done my best by not letting them shed a drop of blood." After saying that, Carol threw the coffee-stained napkin into the trash can beside him with an expressionless face. It was as if the dirty napkin was the old magical world that he hated. Grindelwald looked at Karl quietly and completed the whole set of actions without saying a word. It took a full minute before the smile returned to his face. "You are truly outstanding, kid. In the past 1,000 years of the wizarding world, no one has ever come up with a ruling method like yours. Those famous wizards either lack ambition or want to use violence and powerful magic. Come and conquer and rule the entire magical world. There has never been anyone like you who does this." "Is this a compliment?" Karl smiled. "Of course." Grindelwald nodded slightly. "It was also a test, and you obviously passed it. And I'm also curious about how you guessed that I was testing you." "It's very simple." Karl pointed at the boutique bar in front of him that was full of German flavor. "If I'm not mistaken, this bar should be opened by you. Every layout and every detail here is amazing. They are all very sophisticated and in your style. It seems that you are planning to retire here. You are such a smart man." Grindelwald smiled awkwardly, then said with a sad face, "But unfortunately, Al doesn't seem to like it here, or he is still unwilling to give up Hogwarts. Give up the responsibility he has been carrying for nearly a century." Grindelwald's expression was extremely lonely, just like an outstanding young man. Through his own hard work, he finally bought a 70 square meter house in a 3rd or 4th tier city. So he happily invited his fiancée and lover to visit. Introduce her the decoration of each room and the beautiful vision of their future life. In the end, the other party just glanced at it and shook his head. "I'm sorry, I can't give up my career like this. I still want to go back to work and work hard." After saying that, he took the first flight in the morning and flew back to the City of Lights and Night, where they would never be able to have a home in their lifetime. The other person was left sitting in this small house, looking at the carefully arranged decorations everywhere, at a loss as to what to do. Love really does make people stupid. Even the devil is no exception. Carol looked at the down and out handsome old man in front of him, smiled, stretched out a hand and patted the other's shoulder. "Don't be so sad, old man. You'd better run this bar well. He may very well be the only income for the 2 of you in the future. That old B won't be able to stay in the position of principal for long. At most, he will be forced to retire in a year. I think he will be able to control him and coax him by then." This time it was Grindelwald's turn to have a face full of question marks. He looked at the young man in front of him, a little unable to believe his ears. After a moment's hesitation, he shook his head helplessly. "I know you are a very smart kid with strong abilities, but sometimes there are things that cannot be changed by ability alone. Dumbledore's place in Hogwarts is like the sun in the sky. It has long been taken for granted and is a matter of course. It's probably not something that can be done simply to pull Al down from that position. Even I couldn't do it back then. I don't believe there is anything in this world that can make Al give up his responsibilities. What? If the economic crisis is to blame? Karl said with a sly smile. What? Grindelwald was incredulous. What did you just say? You guessed it right. Karl chuckled. Don't forget the honorary chairman of the first savings bank in the magical world. But, our respected and wise headmaster Dumbledore, after any crisis, the angry masses will always look for someone to take the blame. It's pitiful. This time it's our principal's turn. You're lying to me, aren't you? Grindelwald still couldn't believe it. Karl put away his smile and looked serious. What do you say? This is not right. This is not right. Grindelwald became a little flustered and kept turning his head to think hard. Finally, he turned his gaze to Karl. Logically, they should have known long ago that you were actually running the bank, and you're already famous. You just made such a big news on the continent across the ocean. How could they? But they don't know, right? Karl's smile began to become a little sinister. I would like to thank Headmaster Dumbledore and the Ministry of Magic for their blockade of information from the Muggle world. 80% of the wizards in the British wizarding world now don't know my story in the Muggle world, although I do have some fame in the British wizarding world, and they are not good reputations, but in the minds of ordinary people, the reason why I can do so many earth-shaking things in the British wizarding world, the fundamental reason is just my identity. I'm Dumbledore's adopted son, so I can do whatever I want. The real villain has always been our dear principal, who is trying to eliminate a mere lackey like me. How can we appease the anger of the masses? Even if we are to offer sacrifices on the altar, they must be from among pigs, dogs, cows, and sheep, the fattest and best one. I'm not qualified yet. After hearing this, Grindelwald was stunned for 5 minutes before he slowly spoke. You are such a thoughtful child. It is indeed an honor for Dumbledore to have found you before I did. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.